When did the popular kid's life fall apart in a few seconds? I don't know that his life really fell apart, because it turns out his home life was terrible all along, but it definitely shifted how people looked at him. And I went to a small school, so there weren't too many divisions between people. When you only have 40 something kids in a grade, popular is kind of relative. But a kid's mom decided to leave her husband, the kid's stepdad. The stepdad, who was known to faculty and was considered a good guy, stopped by the school to deliver something to his stepson. Cool. The secretary gave him a pass to drop it off at the stepson's class rather than call him down to the office. The stepdad actually had a gun and had no idea where the stepson was during that period, so was roaming the halls. Luckily, a friend of the stepson, who knew what an abusive, dangerous guy the stepdad was, happened to be in the office and alerted everyone. We all went on lockdown. The police came. We were stuck for a couple of hours as they swept the school after arresting the guy. Then, it came out that the kid had been abused for the entire time his mom had been married to the guy, and she only was leaving him after he started hitting her. It was a whole thing, and while everyone had pretty much always liked the kid, he suddenly just had everyone feeling sorry for him. Teachers let him go back and redo assignments to boost his grade. People gave him stuff to start over. He just kind of got really closed off and stopped joking around and only hung out with like 3 people after that. He was known as the abused kid with a stepdad who was going to shoot up a school, and that's hard to get over. So I went to high school in a somewhat rural area in Alabama. During my junior year, the county's district attorney was coming to give a speech about drunk driving or something like that. It's been a few years, so I don't exactly remember. Well, an hour before the assembly, everyone was called to the gym and told not to being anything with us. We get there, and there are dogs and officers searching students. Everyone was freaked up, but we had assumed they moved the assembly from the auditorium to the gym and wanted to be careful because the speaker was a high public figure in the area. After he spoke, the principal told us we couldn't leave the gym, and everyone was confused but didn't look too much into it. After an hour or so, lunch had came and went, and people started getting rowdy, so the principal told us we were going to be escorted to the elementary, intermediate, and middle school for lunch. This is when we started to panic and ask what was going on, but no one would answer. Grade by grade, we were escorted by at least a dozen officers across the school lots to each other's school. All 4 schools were on the same property, given 20 minutes to eat, then promptly escorted back. Another few hours had gone by and everyone was on edge, but still no one would tell us what was going on. The principal had asked to see a handful of students, then left us there again. We couldn't do anything but sit there. We couldn't leave the bleachers. If we had to use the bathroom, we were escorted by an officer. We couldn't leave for the day, and no one was allowed on the property, so we couldn't even leave without parents. Well, it was time for school to be over, and they still wouldn't let us leave. At this point, students were mad and upset. People had jobs to get to and siblings to pick up. A few students tried to leave, but was immediately returned to the bleachers. One guy had to be escorted out and arrested because he tried to fight an officer for not letting him leave. Finally, after seeing the students get riled up, the principal told us what was going on. A student had left a bomb threat in the girls' bathroom, and there was a SWAT team and bomb squad searching every inch of the school building, and we couldn't leave until it had been cleared and they found out who did it. This sent the whole gym completely silent, and everyone sat that way for a few moments. We were all terrified and just looking around. After about another hour, the principal called a student down and took her outside, where she was arrested. It was one of the popular girls and everyone was shocked, but they let us go home, so we knew it was her. The next morning we found out what happened. She had disliked the district attorney because he handled her family's case poorly. She had made a very poorly built explosive device with clay and bullets and hid it in her pack bag and was going to set it off during the assembly. She was arrested and banned from all Alabama public schools. From what I heard, she is still in prison and will be for a long time. Look up Chilton County High School bomb threat and you can find some of the news articles. Edit. For everyone pointing out the 2 local news articles, no, they are not accurate, which can be seen, since both are very contradictory, as the police nor the school made a statement. We did not return to class that day, but we did the next day. There was a bomb found, but it was so poorly made they couldn't actually call it that, considering it was basically clay and a few shotgun shells. It was handled very badly by everyone, especially the media. Him and a kid I've known since about first grade drove about 8 to 9 hours to visit a friend who had moved away at the time and was feeling depressed. They were going to surprise him, and he called saying he found a way to get a plane ticket back to them, where they all three were friends originally, while they were already 14 hours deep in a road trip. So they turned around, and when they were about 45 minutes from home, they got into a bad accident, and he died on the scene. The kid I knew from first grade watched his best friend bleed out next to him upside down in his car. He had long hair and the paramedics thought he was a female upon arrival, and first grade friend said he was desperately trying to tell them he was a boy and his name and to call his family to tell them what happened. He was pronounced dead before the ambulance even took off. First grade friend came back to school after a little under 2 months with a 16-inch long and about 1-inch wide scar all the way up the back of his arm. They were in a band together and played in the school's band. Hallways were bleak for months, probably the rest of the year honestly. He sat with us at lunch and tried to be normal, but we all knew he wasn't the same. They were good people, and even though only one of them died, it was like they both left that day because he was never the same. I don't even think he makes music anymore. I knew them both for almost 10 years when it happened, and it was the first time somebody I knew that was my age had died, and it was very sobering. You know nobody is immortal, but you don't expect somebody to be ripped from existence so quickly. Not me, but my niece sex trafficking. Popularity usually comes from beauty, and she was, and still is no exception. Head cheerleader, gymnast, singer, songwriter, and social media star. My sister, who is also stunning, had a troubled life. She ended up pregnant at 13, and by the time she was 23 had 4 kids, 1 abusive husband, and a healthy drug addiction, which landed her in jail for 5 years. While in jail, the kids were living with their father, who was also a pillhead/drunk pointers dealer. Started living with them when my niece was around 13. A gorgeous girl and 2 grown men who obviously can't make good decisions don't go well together. She was raped repeatedly for the next 3 years. She did not get to choose her first time, and her only means of coping with all this were drinking heavily and running around town with the wrong people. During a binge, she only remembers the parts where young girls and women were coming over odd hours through the night and constantly being moved around. She did not understand this at all, nor what was really happening. Well, the dealer turned out to be a bigger asshat and decided to dip his toe into sex trafficking. Asshat eventually decided my niece needed to be moved so she could start working, and her dad decided she would be one less mouth to feed. She started to get swept up into it and was supposed to be sent to Ohio that weekend. Overhearing their conversation, she ended up telling a teacher at school. They went to the authorities. They blew the case apart, arrested both dad and asshat. Needless to say, my niece is beyond scarred. After testifying in open court, she turned to alcohol once more. Now she is a functioning alcoholic and has alienated thousands of friends and followers and has avoided all contact from her family. I miss her terribly and wish I knew where she was. I was raised with a different father than my sister and got married after college to a US Marine. So I no idea this was going on. Knowing I could have stopped all of this literally makes me sick and keeps me up at night. Obligatory related but different point. I'm taking a cert second in engineering pathways for school from year 11th to year 12th because I needed to fill in a subject. I'd never even used a drill before taking this subject. Because of that, whilst everyone is working super efficiently and understanding what to do, I'm still struggling with a drill. I even managed to snap a 3mm drill bit. The guy across from me, let's call him T, is giving me a bunch of trash because he's had more experience than me, and drilling is the easiest thing in the world. It kinda is though. Now I know how to use one. I see his point. A few others are also giving me trash about it. I'm taking all of it without caring at all whilst working my way around the drill. After a 60-minute lesson of practicing, I've got drilling into metal absolutely nailed, and I'm making good progress on my project, a bottle opener, because my school is cool. Come again next week, and while I'm drilling into my project a bit more, before filing everything to shape, T asks, so, how's your drilling going, super condescendingly. Someone on the table's even gone and said da nerdy dude's taking some serious trash from T lately. He was there the whole time and the only guy who saw through T's trash. Mad respect to you, James. I just ignore T and keep working on my project. Point, this was a lesson. That sir brought out a handheld plasma cutter, saying that because things were taking too long, people were allowed to use the plasma cutter to cut the large hole in the bottle opener. T had to restart his project because it got lost or something like that and happily accepted the offer. Who doesn't love cutting corners? Pun 100% intended. At this point, I had already made a bunch of progress with the drill, so I didn't need the cutter. Sir gives the demonstration and T goes first on the plasma cutter. He absolutely destroys his bottle opener and starts blaming the plasma cutter for being absolutely stupid. He's looking super annoyed and upset at the thing. Like 5 minutes pass and he's still complaining. So in the most genuine sounding voice I could muster, I asked, so, how's your plasma cutting going? He absolutely lost his crap, talking about how he'd never used a plasma cutter, ironic, and how the thing was stupid and blah blah blah. I got instant respect from the whole table. He instantly lost all respect from the table. Meanwhile, I'm perfectly happy with my project that was done entirely with a drill. More irony. Even the teacher's giving me respect. Point, best part is, when T tried to restart his bottle opener for a second time, he decided to stick with drilling the holes rather than plasma cutting them. In his frustration, he somehow snapped the 5mm drill bit. I thought I was special snapping the 3mm bit. I have no clue how he managed a 5mm bit. Point, TLDR guy. T gives me trash over my inability to drill and gets respect. I get better at drilling. He botches plasma cutting. One comment, I've got all the respect and he's lost all respect. Point, edit. I know the story is kinda boring, but it was much funnier in person, and I enjoy the story. A girl I knew in 3rd grade became very popular over one summer. She was always goth or punk in her younger days. She was a teacher's daughter and pretty well known for her rebellious nature. She hung out with kids much older than her, maybe into their later teens or early 20s. One night, we were in 5th grade at that point. Her friends and her got drunk at a pier. They decided to rob this one house, maybe houseboat. It's been so long. The older kids ended up realizing they were leaving too much evidence and decided to torch the place. Only issue was, there was an elderly woman in the home who didn't hear anyone. They didn't know she was there until they lit her room on fire. Point, that girl stayed to help, and when authorities arrived she was the only person besides the victim to stay behind. She took all responsibility and gave nobody's name. She was given house arrest and probation. The woman in the fire ended up surviving for a little while, but died shortly after. Ike. Every family heirloom had been either destroyed in the fire or was stolen beforehand. Her daughters came into the media shortly after to announce that over 200 years of memorabilia had been lost forever, as the elderly woman was the matriarch of the household. Her parents weren't necessarily rich. They went into a depression as a household due to lawyers' fees, disgrace from the community, etc., and didn't seem as though they would recover. Even in lawyers' fees alone, I'm pretty sure they went bankrupt. Point, the dad mentioned months later they should go do something as a family. Hunting season was only a couple weeks away, so why not? He went to the local gun outlet and left the older sister and her alone. When they came back, they found that she had shot herself. The circumstances were so odd. She had used a shotgun she couldn't reach the trigger of, yet they didn't find the powdered residue you would find if the barrel tip were pressed to the impact point, and it was propped up against the door, as though to prevent someone coming in. Her bedroom window was open, no note, and there was music playing on repeat from her stereo that she wouldn't be caught dead listening to. The sister thought she heard frustrated yelling from the room, but assumed her little C's was just venting out like she usually did. Point, the older C's had to be removed from the viewing room from what I heard. She sat beside her sister and meticulously repainted her nails, because asterisk did every week, but she can't now. I should help her. Well, fuck. I think this is my time to vent. His life hasn't fallen apart yet, but I think it will. Point, my high school has very strict social hierarchy, and I would consider myself maybe B tier. I'm not a weird kid at all and nobody dislikes me. I can get along with just about anyone. But I also don't play sports and I don't go to parties or anything. I have no place being super close friends with the captain of our football team and the dude like every girl in our school wants to bang. But I just am. Sophomore year his father just walked out. He could tell something was going on, but he was never told anything specific. His father was just gone one day. His sister is incredibly emotionally abusive and his mother, though she is kind, does not understand him at all and keeps pushing him to play football, even though he doesn't want to. He signed to play football at Trinity and immediately afterwards told me it was the worst mistake of his life. I think I'm the only person he knows who actually pays attention to what he says. I helped him out of an incredibly toxic relationship which he thought was normal, as in he'd tell me things like, yeah, I've tried breaking up with her twice, but she won't let me, like that was just how our relationships worked. He had a total emotional breakdown one night when these middle schoolers were making Instagram posts about him, basically cyberbullying him because to them, he's some monolithic high school Chad. He told me he wanted to kill himself that night, and I obviously freaked out over it, which I don't think he understood. He didn't understand why anybody would be worried that he'd want to kill himself. He's told me multiple times now that he feels like a stranger. Wherever he is, I don't know what he's going to do without me. I know that sounds conceited, but he's going away. He hates football. He hates the college he's going to. He hates his family. And he hates his major. I'm so fucking scared he's going to die. There was a popular kid in my youth who was also a bully, and I was one of his regular targets. I was terrified of him and his buddies. I harbored a resentment against him throughout most of my life. I always thought he would end up in a bad way, criminal, drug addict, etc. In fact, due to my unforgiving nature regarding the wrongs he'd visited upon me, I really hoped that would be the case. Which is really odd, because I never felt that way about anyone else in my life. I suppose it was due to the time of life the bullyings occurred and other factors. I cannot say. I grew up, went to college, started a career, had a family, the whole schmear. The internet age comes and grows toward what it is today. I hadn't thought about him in years. Then for some reason or another, I thought about him and decided to Google his name, fully expecting, because I wanted it, to see a mugshot and some news story about how he was in prison. It was quite the opposite. He'd grown into a model of a man, the type I could only aspire to be. He was a head football coach, a leader of young men and shaper of fresh minds. And the world was deprived of this truly good person as that faker cancer claimed his life. The online tributes for him were many. I was ashamed, and rightly so, for wishing he was just another less than on this planet replete with assholes. I learned more than a few things from the experience. The most important, I think, was people can grow and become far better than their former selves. There is no expiration date to this, no matter how faked up you are. Sure, the guy was a tool in his youth, but he didn't let it define his adulthood. I'd wager he matured faster than I did. Still working on that, methinks. A close second is that as open-minded and kind as I think I am, there are still parts of me that can be hateful and just plain unpleasant. I suppose the whole affair was a reminder that personal growth is a lifelong process. Peace. Edit. My thanks for the silver. This happened way back on middle school, or it's so weird to call it like that. Here the educational years are different. To be more exact, when I was 12, first year of a 6-year high school, I was an entitled kid. I won't deny it. I've been trying to stop being like that since I noticed, but that's not the point. It's just that being like that. I was alone, and no kid wanted to deal with me. There was this girl that made me feel worse. I did have 1 or 2 friends, not extra close, but we could take working together without making a scene. And then she arrived. We did not tolerate each other very much, partly because I was a little piece of shit, but she wasn't too far either. She was manipulative, the Regina George kind of friend on front stab on back, and even I didn't notice in the first place. Yes, I didn't like her too much, but I didn't see her as a mean or bad person. I only didn't like her. But then, everything was worse. She managed to befriend my friends and join our group. The other 2 girls did like her, So we decided to do it, and actually, I started to be more neutral towards her. I hoped we could be like that a little more, but then, that damn girl attacked. She started spreading rumors about me, like she hitted me yesterday, and that kind of stuff, and even threw one of her notebooks to the trash, when no one was looking, and then said it was me. She had this dang ability, to cry even when nothing happened. As a result, everyone started to get away from me. Those two were only some of them, not all. Hell, there were much more than those, and even my two friends did. I was alone, and didn't even dare to attack. Actually, I didn't even have anything to do with what happened to her. There was a day party of a girl in our class, and she invited everyone. I did have my doubts about going, but decided to go anyway. There was cake, count me in. I was just on my phone, chatting with my friend, that lived far from my home, when I heard some anger scream. Everybody that wasn't there already, including me, went to see. They found that shitty girl opening the day girl's presents, and even when they told her to stop, she refused and said, "I'm your friend, be generous." Oh, totally crushed. They didn't come back with me. This ain't a movie, but they did get far away from her. Even my two friends told some bad things she did with them. Damn, it was kind of satisfying to see the girl that made me suffer like that suffer too. This happened in high school. It was a girl on the cheerleading squad. She was pretty much what you would think of in regards to a popular cheerleader. She was attractive, popular, and super nice as well. Well liked by everyone. There was one teacher, male, who taught a science class, and was also a cheer coach. He was newly married with a newly born child as well. Fast forward halfway into the school year, it comes out that on the road at a cheer event, the morning after, another one of the cheer coaches found this girl and the teacher in the same sleeping bag asleep in the morning. They obviously had hooked up. The teacher was promptly fired and made the news, although I'm not sure what charges he faced. This was junior year in high school. The girl was obviously horribly embarrassed and didn't return to school after that situation. I talked to my friend weeks later who went to school in a town about 30 minutes away. He mentioned a new girl in his class who used to go to my high school. I asked her name and sure enough it was her. A few weeks later he said it was found out what happened with her and the teacher at the new school she was attending. Sure enough, she left shortly after. Not sure what happened to her after that. I hope she is doing okay and managed to recover from that situation. I can't imagine having to change schools that quickly, multiple times, under those circumstances. Only having a little over a year left in school and having to change to multiple schools while leaving behind friends had to be rough. TLDR, NFL prospect gets thrown into a corrupted system and pays for it with his future. Not really the token popular guy, but he was probably the biggest name to come out of my hometown. Dude was a genetic freak, like a 6 feet 8 inches 310 pounds monster. Naturally, he became one of the top football prospects in the state. He was so good that no one questioned his random arrival to one of the best HS football programs. Well, he dodged plenty of career-ending stories throughout HS. Getting caught with weed, a 4-hour sex tape leak, gang-related behavior, the works. Anyways, he goes to one of the best college football teams. He plays in a national championship. That next summer, a local newspaper from my hometown puts the pieces together. The college coach manipulated the state sporting committee to get him into our HS. He regularly worked to cover up the stories of him being a bad kid. He even paid him a stupid amount of money, which the athlete used on a Dodge Charger he got from his uncle. So this story would obviously be national news. But the kid gets caught smoking weed twice in a week, and this time he's punished for it. They kick him out of the college. He gets sent to some random JUCO team. His attempts to expose the college coach for what he was are seen as an attack on his character by a disgruntled delinquent kid. NFL prospect gone in a week because he was taken advantage by the system. The vice president of SAD, student against drunk driving, and popular guy year ahead of me in high school ran someone over and killed them the night of the big school production of Guy and Dolls. Victim guy from next town over was walking on a dark stretch of road near the river. It was dark with no witnesses. VG may or may not have been in the travel lane. Autopsy said he was pretty drunk. About 1 AM popular guy was driving home from a popular kids party for all the cast members after the play and drove down the same dark road. He caught the victim from behind and ran right through the guy at about 40 miles per hour. The collision took victim out of his boots. Victim guy ends up launching through the windshield and lands upside down in the passenger seat. He is dead. Popular guy stops the car. Tries to process how this dead guy ended up in his passenger seat. Popular guy had been drinking off a keg at the party and his car had multiple empty beer cans in it. Popular guy leaves his car with the empties and the dead guy in it and ran off into the woods. Police show up on the scene. They have no witnesses. Just a car stopped in this dark road with a dead guy upside down in the passenger seat and a windshield blown out. At first they think dead guy is the passenger who has been killed with a shotgun blast through the windshield. Later they piece together what happened. Popular guy hides in the woods until the next day. Walks home and family lawyers up. Turns himself in, but by this point no alcohol in system. He was 17, so they threw the little book at him. No jail but pretty much broke the guy's life and the hosts of the party got sued pretty hard. Apparently the popular kid from my high school hated that guy, was a dick even after school, so when he finished college, no one at any business wanted him. So one day I saw that I had to interview him. Bear in mind this guy bullied me for 4 years straight. When he first saw me, I could see that he didn't recognize me at all. So I continued the interview as normal, and at one point there was a question he couldn't answer, and that was the tipping point for the reason not to hire him. He flipped out, said I'm the stupidest guy on the planet and they'd be lucky to have him. That's when I decided to tell him who I am, and that I've known him for a long time. I mean he was my bully. After that he started begging for a job, and acted like we are friends. I told him he's not cut out for the line of business he is in. That's when he insulted me again. I simply got up from my desk, walked right up next to, and said to him, you bullied me in high school. One day I told you that you are going to need something from me one day, and I'm going to say no. Well, this is that day. Look where I'm now, and look at where you are. Last I heard something about him, he was working as a janitor at my old high school. That's when I realized his life fell away in just a few seconds. Please. No other business/company wanted to even interview him because he was fired from his first job for arrogance, disrespect, and most importantly he abused one of his female colleagues. So there was this girl, I'll call her Girl M. She was the perfect of girl. She was blonde, with long straight hair, always shiny trendy clothes from Forever 21 and Sheet, soft makeup, a face that screams damn, that kid must record TikToks dancing renegade yet attracts the boys. I was the opposite of her, and I was even more highlighted because of that. And also due to that fact, she bullied me. One day, a Thursday, I think, she lost her sheet at a WhatsApp group. She screamed how worthless I was, how I should suicide as soon as possible, but if I was a coward like always she could stab me and throw me at a trash can for rats to eat, how nobody cared about such a scum like me, and how the world would be better without a waste of oxygen like me. She also commented how she was amazing, the basis of every friendship, how pretty she was compared to a trash bag like me, and even threatened to kill my parents after killing me, etc etc. But one crucial detail she didn't notice was the group had everyone from the school, from our classmates to the teachers, and our teachers were online. Even though all the simps that followed her tried to defend her, she got a 6-day suspension. It was at the wrong place at the wrong time point the day she came back to school. People gave her all kinds of looks. Disgusted, angry, ironic, laughing, and the teachers looked pissed off when looking at her. Honestly, I felt bad for her a bit. All her friends abandoned her, so she could experience what a loser was. The other week she left my old school and moved to my new school. She left my actual school because my best friend who was her classmate exposed her. I don't even like remembering about that sheet. I'm just glad it's over. The high school days. This dude Brian was a wide receiver on the football team and was a major tool. Always late, always running his mouth, but nevertheless very popular. I played defense, so we often had some colorful back and forth exchanges. Anyways, there was to be this huge weekend after party after the big game and the whole team was invited, including cheerleaders. In his truly arrogant fashion, Brian and a few other football brothers were being loud football brothers, and this caught the attention of one very popular cheerleader to see. She and 4 sports ball jabberiness made their way upstairs, and the ruckus was certainly very audible. I believe the term used was running a train on Stacy. After a few minutes of hearing Pornhub's finest from the upstairs bedroom, we all then heard a very loud and very upsetting "what the fuck." Much to everyone's curiosity, a small herd of us hurried to the stairs to try and get an idea of what just happened. We heard some shuffling, some panic, and some very odd noises. Boom. Crash. A chair fell over? A dresser? Either way, this is when Brian exploded out the bedroom door, and I say exploded because he was literally covered in messy suppy sheet all over his white football hoodie. He had volunteered to lie on his back while Stacy was kneeling over him during oral, and out of some nightmarish pleasure session she relieved herself all over his chest. He got popped on. A lot. TLDR. Popular sports bro in high school went to a party, had a 5-some with a cheerleader, and he got popped on, and the whole party saw him covered in brown sauce. Wasn't so popular and arrogant after that. Finally my story time. The murder actually happened this week, so it might de-anonymize me a bit. In high school, there was this group of girls that were known by their blonde hair because they all had the brightest, most bleached blonde fake hair. For reference, we are all Hispanic and naturally have mainly black and brown hair anyhow. The blonde squad was the prettiest and most popular girls in the school. Some of them were nice, but the leader of the pack, Carrie, name changed, was not nice to me. I heard she could be nice, but I had never experienced it. She was a cheerleader, the others were dancers as well, blah blah blah. You know how it goes anyways. This week we all tuned into the news, and she had shot and killed her ex-boyfriend. She was in her last year of nursing school, had her boobs and butt done, was traveling the world only wearing Louis Vuittons, and now she's looks at 25 years, no bond. The story goes that they broke up. We can call him Chris. She slept with someone who Chris wasn't fond of in a threesome. The man that wasn't fond of Chris sent him the videos and pics of the encounter. He went to vandalize her car, so she went to his house. They got into a fight about it. Pushing and shoving happened. At some point his gun falls out of his pocket, and she grabs the gun and shoots 15 times. Dude, 15 times. 6 land on chest and neck. He left his car running and collapsed by the mailbox, where she ran to him and begged, "Chris, wake up." They airlifted him to the hospital, where he is later pronounced dead. She is now charged with second-degree murder and was arrested literally less than a few days ago. Her rig is full of people calling her a murderer. No one thought that would happen. This story is based on rumors from what the mom of Chris said, what Carrie's friends said, and what was released on the police report. It can be completely bullshit, or it can be true. We will find out in the coming months. No one specific, but I assume most of them are at the Old Tony local bar. I don't particularly keep tabs on anyone, but what I do occasionally see on social media is sort of what you'd expect. We got dudes trying to relive glory years. If high school was your best period in life, you've seriously faked up. We have some people who have remained absolutely gorgeous, but they also seem to be the most boring humans on the planet when they have the chance to make a post. These types also seem to be the "I'm my own boss and sell back X product for some company." That is clearly a pyramid scheme. Some people got out of high school and are still trying to find themselves almost 10 years later. I get there is no time limit on success, but this isn't like they have a long-term goal. This is just sad, self-loathing, pitiable commitment issues. When your only hobby is a high school sport, or you go all in on being that perfect student, I feel like you're more likely to end up like this. It's those students that don't realize high school is a microcosm essentially separate from reality. The world doesn't care about your straight A's in high school or your small town heroics on the football field. Sure, scholarships might come, but I saw those squandered more times than I can count during my university years. The people who came out normal or even successful are usually the unassuming ones. Kids who were never amazing at sports and were satisfied with their season Bs. Especially the ones who really learned to be socially mature went places. It took me college to figure out how to not be an introverted douche canoe. I'm not sure if that counts for anything, but I ended up with a master's in a foreign country. And lastly are the people who died. Some of them, I can't say much about. They did something stupid once, and it wasn't right that they died. Others did something stupid 3 dozen times and I frankly don't have enough sympathy for them. And others yet just blipped off the mortal plane in freak accidents, where answers are either unknowable or extremely private. Personally, all I know is you couldn't pay me enough to do high school again. I have great memories and made lifelong friends. But also being an antisocial hormone-crazed rage machine with a penchant for boners at inappropriate times is not an experience I ever want to relive. So this goes back to elementary school. I had this teacher who was incredibly abusive. That's another long story, but she had her favorites, and her favorites kinda became the popular kids in my grade, partly because no one wanted to be on this teacher's radar. There was this girl who was a bully in her own right and one of this teacher's favorites. She had an older brother who tutored her at home, so she always had already done pretty much everything in school beforehand, and the teacher made her out to be a genius, and she got nearly 100% up until grade 8, but once in high school, especially near the end of high school, she found that she actually had to work at it, but didn't have her tutor feeding her everything anymore, so she had to study on her own. She managed to finish high school and go to university, but failed out of school hard with a mountain of school loans and a wake-up call that she wasn't actually a genius and just living on the coattails of her older brother. She now works a minimum wage job paycheck to paycheck and seems to have no plans to do anything and seems to have just stalled out. She has no money, not enough social skills to maintain a relationship because she's been a bully all her life. She's kinda ugly as an adult and seems to not care for her personal hygiene. She's in her mid-30s now, and when I last flew back home and ran into her, I smelled her before I saw her. It was bad. I know it sounds bad, but I've had her on Facebook for years and have been slowly following this for years as basically schadenfreude to make myself feel better whenever I'm down. That abusive teacher used to tell me I was stupid and never going to amount to anything and hold my bully up as this shining example of the perfect student. So honestly, the dumpster fire that is now my bully's life feels good to watch. Does that make me a bad person? Might be covered up, but me and him were really good friends and were the best players for our HS baseball team from freshman to senior year at the time. He was dating the popular cheerleader, and it was his first ever serious relationship. During senior year, she wanted him to send a dick pic to her over the weekend, and he had no idea how properly take one. So he went with his first idea and sent her a whole body nude with soft pages next to her ankle sock. Let's just say, when we came back to school, his girlfriend sent it to some friends and his nude went schoolwide. He went from the popular baseball player who had a full ride to a pretty big college to the joke and bullied kid with a macro pages point. Sadly later that night, he went drinking and driving. He got into a really bad accident that turned him into a vegetable state. He passed away several months after the accident and people still made fun of him for the rest of our senior year. I lost my popularity shortly after the accident because of how much I defended him and talked against people who made fun of him. I as well turned down my scholarships for baseball and went with a different career with the military. Sometimes I regret my decision, but playing baseball made it too pain and I eventually started to hate baseball because of how much I thought about him and how we used to play together. I still miss him and don't understand why she did that to him. He was absolutely kind, helped others no matter what the problem was, and definitely an amazing boyfriend to her. I just wish she and he didn't do it, because he would still be here today, probably playing in the MLB. TLDR, the popular guy basically accidentally killed a motorcyclist and became withdrawn as couldn't face the drama or the embarrassment that something like that was hanging over him. Oh my god, this is long. The backstory is the first 4 paragraphs. Oops, this was more social life than school life, but I had a group of friends sorta based themselves around mean girls. Okay, so we are gay. I was the shy guy on the fringes, and I met this group everybody followed. People wanted to be in their Facebook and Instagram photos, and they got so many likes, and was the sorta group that got invited to parties and people just wanted to hang with. For some reason the ringleader, the funny no nonsense guy, liked me and welcomed me in, and I become popular for the first time ever. Telling you now, it's shit up there. Too many rules to follow to keep the facade that you're perfect and not weird like you used to be, his words. I had a couple friends from before he hates, and he got everyone who hung on to him to hate him. Me included. Bad move on my part, but the fame tasted great. One was once part of the group, but he was destroyed. The last straw for me was that I wasn't allowed to like certain guys, and also one of my friends I'd known for years was 1 point, because I wouldn't unfriend him. I was kicked out of our WhatsApp group and told I wasn't part of the group anymore, but I wouldn't be destroyed if I kept my mouth shut. Of course, people wondering why we weren't speaking, and my old mate accepted me back due to knowing how toxic the others were, and glad I got away. Anyways, they destroyed me. People deleting me on Facebook, left, right and center. I'd go out for drinks on Sunday afternoon and suddenly people just wouldn't talk to me anymore. I was too afraid to go out because I didn't know who to say hello to or not. My old friends all accepted me back because they weren't dicks and knew I needed the lesson point anyways. After I got away, he'd sneer in the distance, got people to give me shit. And then it all fell apart for him one morning when he accidentally killed a motorcyclist on his way to work, and he withdrew from going out due him not being able to rip the shit out of others anymore with something like that on him. Dude was a major chad in my small town, was a huge dick to everyone, had a reputation of when he lost a fight his dad would come up to the park or scatter park and start shit with kids and other parents. On the eve of the first day of our freshman year of high school, our football team play our rivals across town in a small town with only 2 high schools and a heated rivalry. At the football game, Chad go into an argument with a gang, talking shit and telling them the basic come to my faking house, my dad will lay you fakers out trash talk. The game ends, everyone goes home. Chad lived in a nice house with his parents at the front of a decent neighborhood where his house faced the main street. The sign for the neighborhood was in their yard. At about 2 AM that night, a car pulled into his yard and laid on the horn. Dad went to the front door, opened it, and stepped outside to see what was going on. The gang members on the car opened fire on him, killing him. The next day, our first day of high school, it was all anyone could talk about. Did you hear Chad got his dad killed? It was shocking and very sad even for the people who hated him. His family stayed in that house, and for a few years every few months the gang would go back and graffiti the neighborhood signs saying things like Chad's fault and similar taunts. That was over 10 years ago. Chad graduated high school and went to a decent college. Facebook says he is doing fine, I guess. He was never the same ever that event. How could he be? Quarterback of the football team in a small football-obsessed town, dated the principal's daughter who arguably was the most classically beautiful girl at my HS. Insert hetero girl crush here, and generally a nice person. He thought he was a god. Senior year he does something, of which I'm not privy to because I wasn't in their clique, and she yells a string of nastiness and outs what a loser he is. Ends it with something about his macobiness. They break up, and she moves on. Mom of 2 beautiful girls now, and seems happy other than her early 30s divorce. We stayed fringe free in Sim. I was home visiting about 10 years post high school, and go to the bar on a random Saturday night. Cue the QB who stumbles up to me, offers to buy me a drink. Sure dude, right from the bartenders to my hand, if you don't mind. We share about 2 sentences. Later he comes back and asks if I know where his mom lives. Actually I do, if she still lives where she used to. It's that smaller town, and can I give him a ride? Sure dude, assuming he lives near his mom. Nope, lives with mom in the basement. Does some fencing with dad but otherwise unemployed. Do I want to hang out? But I'll have to be quiet, so I don't wake up his parents. No bud, I'm good. See him a year later, and he was dating my friend's moderately handicapped, intellectually and slightly physically sister. I totally get, and I'm okay with being the midpoint between those extremes. He got it semi together in the years after. Married to someone from far from our town, and had a few kids. Still works for dad. Never left the tiny town. Is a low-level football coach, but I don't know if it's for the school or for Park and Rec. To this day his profile photo is a picture of his senior picture. Few more stories similar for his cronies. My high school popular guy slash self-absorbed golden boy bully was murdered by his business partner slash best friend slash lawyer and thrown into a crevasse. This happened in 2000, but they had opened the first Gap stores in my country, which was semi-cool at the time, or so they thought at least. Golden Boy's business partner was embezzling money from their company and was being confronted at the time, so he asked Popular Guy to meet him in an isolated part of town and ended up beating Popular Guy in the head with a hammer and stuffed him nearly dead into the trunk of his car, where Popular Guy either passed or died in the crevasse where best friend slash cokehead threw the body. Then the murderer pretended to know nothing and played innocent publicly. He even sat by the side of the family while pleading on TV for the Popular Guy to come forward. Point: the cops could triangulate their phones within the same area at the same time, and Popular Guy had told people they were meeting, so the cops knew the two of them had met as planned and knew that best friend had a history of embezzlement and a heavy coke problem. The murderer had taken badly beaten slash barely alive Popular Guy and driven out into the lava fields, where he threw Popular Guy, either dead or alive, into a crevasse. Best friend later confessed and led the cops to the body. Point: his parents were so heartbroken over his murder. He had been a real golden boy, played professional soccer, and it looked like he would have a golden life ahead of him. So now he's remembered like some sort of a hero when I sit and mumble because he was really mean to anybody he thought he could get away with being mean to. The saddest thing about this is that his siblings say that his parents died of a broken heart because of the murder. An all around sad story. He was part of a popular group, but senior year was a bad year for this guy. Let's call him Jay. He was a basketball player, but during the first practice session he tore his ACL. This required surgery and physical therapy. That killed his chances at a basketball scholarship, but as far as we could tell it didn't faze him. Point: so some context about this next bit. First and foremost, he had a girlfriend. They had been dating for a long time and seemed very serious. Let's call her R. She was a sweet girl, and they made a great couple. There was another girl, let's call her O, the daughter of one of my app teachers. A classy and his girlfriend plus the rest of their friend circle were in as well. I was a part of this class as well, but I wasn't really part of this group. Well anyway, J and O were both in the broadcasting club at school. They did morning announcements and such. Well, O was changing one morning to do a skit on the announcements and heard something. She found a phone with a timer taking pictures. It belonged to Jay. He had been setting his phone up in the girls' changing room to take automatic photos. No one ever figured out how long. Point: now this guy was arguably the most popular guy in our grade. Personally I liked him, though I wouldn't say we were close friends. We got along well and talked in class often. Even worse was the fact that he was well in the running for valedictorian, and despite his injury, was still set to get a full ride academic scholarship anyway he set his mind to. Needless to say, everyone was blindsided. That app class was awkward AF for a while. After he was caught, he got expelled and went to some correctional school. I felt super bad for his girlfriend. I vividly remember leaving class one morning and seeing her crying into my app teacher's arms. The wildest bit though, rumor has it his girlfriend stayed with him after all was said and done. As for the rest of the friend circle, I don't know what the fallout was. I distanced myself from that mess ASAP. Point: I don't know what happened to him after graduation. There was this girl in HS that was pretty popular and a total beach. Her parents were rich. Her dad was CEO of some company and her mom was basically a Stepford wife. Her older sister was also super popular, was prom queen when we were freshmen, and she was a senior. Little Miss Beach also had a perfect boyfriend and faking made fun of everyone and made everyone feel like shit. I had moved to the States the summer between 6th and 7th grade. The house we bought was in the same development as hers, and we became friends. Then school started, and she started these awful rumors about me that my family was part of the Russian mob. We are Bulgarian and my parents were both professors at a big university in Connecticut where we lived. My eldest sister was already here in the States, living in New York City and working in finance. Well, Miss Beach decided to tell everyone at school that my sister was a Russian stripper and prostitute. She then told all of these boys that I would probably do it for money too. I hated high school. She spread all of these rumors that I faked guys for money when in fact I was a virgin until I was almost 19. I was almost trapped at a party because of her, and then she told people I was asking for it. The party got broken up, otherwise I probably would have been. She was an awful person. Anyway, little Miss Perfect Cunt Beach got married to some guy who then had multiple affairs on her because she did nothing with her college degree, got married right out of college, and became a housewife. When he left her for a younger model, she couldn't get a job and had to move back to her parents' house with her kids. This was around the time of our 15-year reunion, 2015. She tried to make everyone feel sorry for her. She kept saying she is a good person and couldn't imagine why all of these bad things happened to her. Well, someone else from our class decided to make a Facebook post, including some pictures of all of the awful things she did to people in HS, tagged her in it, mentioned our group for our class and the classes above and below us, and asked others to contribute. There were hundreds of comments of the shitty things she did to people. Apparently her best friend in HS was also set up to be rapped by her, and was actually rapped, but never went to the police, because this crazy bitch convinced her at the time she was asking for it. Eventually it came out her life wasn't all Stepford Wives. Her daddy had been slipping into her bed since she was 10 years old. I kind of felt bad for her, but not really. She's an asshole. He had health issues, disappeared for several months, and ended up not coming back to school. Literally none of his friends bothered to keep up with him, which was obviously shown on social media. His FB went from his friends interacting with him to not at all. When he recovered and graduated HS online, none of his pictures with friends were with friends from HS, which further showed how much they abandoned him. I didn't particularly like the kid. He was the typical big-headed popular kid who didn't like non-popular kids. I didn't even notice his absence GBH until he started posting again on social media, and I looked at his profile to see the drastic change in interaction with his former friends. Another girl went from desirable because she was pretty and had a rivalry attitude to someone people avoided. She got into drugs in middle school and also started smoking. Got pregnant, had an abortion. People started avoiding her. Got pregnant again by someone else, and she ended up dropping out of HS. Now she's off drugs and is apparently loving motherhood, so she's doing better. But at the time, her popularity fell super fast when people found out she was doing heavy drugs. Another girl was actually my friend's adopted sister, former popular cheerleader and lacrosse player. The fact that she was adopted when her parents thought they couldn't have a kid, then they ended up having triplets. One was my friend, really faked with this girl despite the parents never treating her differently. She got pregnant 3 times in HS by 3 different guys, and then turned into trailer trash. Faked a heavy country accent out of nowhere. The first 2 kids, she gave away, adopted, to other family. The last kid she kept, because the guy stuck around. The sad thing is, baby hash 2 is only 10 months older than baby hash 3. It's gonna be really faking sad when she finds out her mom gave her up and kept her sibling who was only couple of months older the older. There was this guy that every girl had a crush on, besides me. I hated the guy. He had gotten my best friend's nudes, then spread them around after saying not to. I know it's not entirely his doing, but it's still messed up. He sent them anonymously in some chat room, so no one knew it was him besides me and my friend. Everyone was making theories and said that the person who did it deserves to be caught. All throughout the year, he got in every girl's pants and was always disrespectful towards all the girls he dated. It made me angry how he was get a bag away with so much. One day, he was being a do ***HE in class, acting like he was better than everyone there. I got fed up with the situation and him, so I stood up and yelled, "Shut the hell up. No one thinks you're funny, and no one knows who you really are." I paused and saw his face go white. At least I don't go around anonymously sending a harmless girl's nudes and then don't own up to it. I have something called respect and decency. You should get some UA *******. The whole class went silent, including the teacher. I sat down, my heart beating from adrenaline, as the teacher looked back to the board. The boy started crying as he realized that his high school career was over, and I was proud as ever. We both got sent to the office, and he confessed. I got ice for a day for language and disruption, but he got suspended. When he came back to school, no one talked to him. No one went near him. Sure, I felt a little bad, but he had been ruling the school for too long. It had to come to a stop. He started a donation platform where people could register their cause and gather donations via his site. Everyone was proud of what he was doing, but I was very skeptical cause I saw his manipulation in action when I got put into his work group at school. After a few years, I kinda forgot about the whole ordeal. My mom showed me a news article about him. He got in problems by not being able to pay out the amount people collected through his site. While he had $1 million mansion and a $500K car, he was a broke student 7 years ago, which he says he paid by money made through Bitcoin and online financial advice. He claimed people would pay up to $50K for an hour-long consult with him. He claimed he couldn't pay out the donations because his server got hacked, but he didn't notify the cops cause they couldn't do anything about it anyway. In the meantime, he was trying to build a hippie commune around his mansion. He ended up having to sell everything he had to be able to pay the people and thus save his name. In all the chaos, he lost his longtime girlfriend and his kids also. Last I heard of it all is that he tried to start his own cryptocurrency and got an artist to design a coin with a chip inside for his cryptocurrency. But the artist already spoke up that he never got paid for the designing or the materials of those crypto coins. At that moment I was like, yeah, that is the dude I remember from the projects working together, taking advantage of the weaker people by using his natural charisma. He started a donation platform where people could register their cause and gather donations via his site. Everyone was proud of what he was doing, but I was very skeptical cause I saw his manipulation in action when I got put into his work group at school. After a few years, I kinda forgot about the whole ordeal. My mom showed me a news article about him. He got in problems by not being able to pay out the amount people collected through his site. While he had $1 million mansion and a $500K car, he was a broke student 7 years ago, which he says he paid by money made through Bitcoin and online financial advice. He claimed people would pay up to $50K for an hour-long consult with him. He claimed he couldn't pay out the donations because his server got hacked, but he didn't notify the cops cause they couldn't do anything about it anyway. In the meantime, he was trying to build a hippie commune around his mansion. He ended up having to sell everything he had to be able to pay the people and thus save his name. In all the chaos, he lost his longtime girlfriend and his kids also. Last I heard of it all is that he tried to start his own cryptocurrency and got an artist to design a coin with a chip inside for his cryptocurrency. But the artist already spoke up that he never got paid for the designing or the materials of those crypto coins. At that moment I was like, yeah, that is the dude I remember from the projects working together, taking advantage of the weaker people by using his natural charisma. Her dad died from a fight with cancer and 4 months later her mother suffered a massive heart attack and did the epitome of drop dead in the kitchen. At first it was like nothing happened. She cried but was back in school the next week. Bought herself a car and a house with her older brother who became her guardian. She even used their deaths to get things like free movie passes and free dinners. She became student body president. Pretty sure she was in hardcore denial. She did eventually fall apart when she left for college and came back and had to enter a mental health facility. But I remember watching her and just being terrified at how far she was going to fall when she finally dealt with her grief. I haven't kept a close eye on her, but I do see her every once in a while around town and she's a smaller / quieter version of herself. Pick the wrong uni to go to. Actually, he became a popular live practical joke while he was falling apart, realizing he shouldn't have gone there. Senior year, 2 of the popular guys thought it would be just hilarious to write racial slurs on some signs our principal put up with encouraging words on them. There was like 4 of them in total, and they wrote some really awful stuff on all of them. Everyone knew it was them, but no one said anything because the main instigator was from a super wealthy and powerful family and was a bully all around of the worst kind. That is until they offered a $3,000 reward for the first person to step forward. Line out of the office all day with everyone telling police came. The rich kid's parents are called and tried to bribe the sheriff, which would have worked if it weren't for the fact that there was no way they could let them off without exposing all the cover-ups they police had done for this family. They both got expelled. The poorer of the two later went out to become a firefighter. That's all I really know. and the rich kid later went on to have a role in one of the Left Behind movies. That's really all I know. Neither cared about the expulsion or had any regrets for what they did, and I don't know if they do now, but it was kinda nice that the one guy finally had to answer to some sort of punishment. American with a full ride to an Ivy League was arrested for impregnating his girlfriend's 13-year-old sister. He's 40 and working at a car wash now. Oh man. So, basically, his girlfriend found out he was cheating on her and airdropped his dick pic to the entire cafeteria. It was pretty bad, because nudes are illegal here in Ohio, at least to minors anyways. It was classified as child pornography. So both ended up in some deep shit. He put a Wi-Fi remote up his bum. Everyone took the screenshot from the FaceTime call and hung it up on lockers everywhere. Eventually kid got so fed up he beat the girl who screenshotted it until she was almost blind. Both got expelled. He got charged with assault. A friend were in my Civil Air Patrol unit and in AFJROC at a different high school. She was very well liked, smart, funny, and kind. Aspirations for the Air Force Academy. Cue a private plane flight in a little Cessna, where the pilot decided to pull a trick and fly under some power lines. Well, he didn't pull it off. Pilot died on impact. The friend woke up in a hospital, paralyzed from the neck down. She was the only one conscious and aware at the scene when paramedics arrived and could talk to them. She died roughly 45 minutes after the crash. She never got a military funeral or burial, though her civilian funeral had a couple hundred people, at least. Our Civil Air Patrol unit held our own remembrance for her. We folded a flag and gave it to her family. As a trumpet player, I played taps. It was hard. I nearly lost it myself at the high note. My best friend in high school was extremely well liked. Always happy, friendly, and the single most naturally charismatic person I have ever met. As his best friend, I knew it covered for a whole life with an equal, but entirely opposite atmosphere. Abusive father, eldest sibling of 4 working as much as he could while in high school to help the family. We were in very similar situations, but from an imperfect caricatured perspective, I was the brain to his pinky. Everyone liked him. He joined the National Guard and went to boot camp between our 11th and 12th grade year. He was already almost a year older than our class. Unfortunately, after high school, he just decided to stop going to his weekend drills, going a wall from the guard. Then he wound up as a getaway driver for an armed robbery of a Taco Bell. He previously was a shift manager at Point. I visited him in prison when I, myself, was on leave from the F. Last I heard, after he got out, he wound up in adult films. I often feel very bad for him. He had tremendous potential. I tried to encourage him to go active duty with me, but losing our school crowd as a good influence for him and as a daily escape from his own domestic problems completely ruined him. His life fell apart in the seconds that it took for him to receive his diploma at commencement. The universe just took its time to catch up to that fact. There was this girl a few grades above me that seemed to have it all. She was beautiful, had a bunch of friends, was a member of the soccer team, and just an all-around well-adjusted high schooler, especially compared to the rest of us. Rumors started spreading about her mom being kind of creepy to younger teens whenever she would be a part of a school event. But, even though she was picked on for it, it was mostly light-hearted. Parents are so weird things, and assuming she was trying to just fit in with the younger crowd. One day none of her siblings came into school. Not only that, but no one could seem to contact them. The closest friends of the 3 siblings were especially distraught and insisted that the police be notified because something was obviously wrong. The principal apparently caught wind of some of the friends of the oldest girl, she was 14 at the time, were begging their older siblings who could drive to take them to her house. The school was pretty much put on lockdown, so they couldn't leave, and an assembly was called. The principal tried to leave out details to the best of his ability, but we were going to hear it later on the news anyway. He told everyone that the night before her father was working on a car that he had been restoring for his son to have when he was old enough. He was underneath it when her mother went into the garage and hit the jack holding the car up with a sledgehammer. I think that's what it was, but I can't remember. Killing him instantly. I don't think the son was home, because I remember the adults wondering if she would have killed him too if he had been helping his dad, which he often did. But the oldest daughter grabbed her younger sister's hand and they ran for the nearest neighbor's house. But by the time the police arrived, their mother was gone. She was later found and arrested. I don't remember where they found her or any of the details of her arrest, but she claimed that it was an accident what happened to her husband and no one was out there to confirm it, the only testimony being what the eldest daughter heard, since the younger girl, who was around 9 at the time, didn't speak after the incident for almost a year. Her testimony wasn't enough for her mother to be charged with it. What she was charged with was the rap of a 13-year-old girl who her mother had been pressuring her daughter to befriend the last couple months. I won't lie and say I remember much of the trial. I think I was either 11 or 12 at the time, so I was pretty oblivious to the reality of the situation. The only reason I even remember it was it being all the adults around me talked about for months, and my youngest cousin and the youngest daughter were best friends, so it affected her a lot too. All 3 kids were taken in by their grandparents, who also had custody of their older brother who was taken away from them when he was 4 for unrelated reasons. After her arrest and trial, all 3 of them were pretty quiet and quit going to sports or doing much of anything. After that point, the oldest girl was put in a mental institution soon after the trial ended, and she never came back. The younger girl finally started talking again after intense therapy and with the help of her friends, and their younger brother got through it by clinging to the older brother and amusing each other to cope with the situation. Last I heard about them was a post on Facebook a few months ago showing both sisters and a few other girls wearing their bridesmaids' dresses and getting ready for the oldest brother's wedding. The experience had definitely aged her, and she looked really thin, but in the pictures they both seemed to be genuinely happy. I only hope that they stick together and don't let their past steal any more of their peace of mind. I don't remember names of the adults, but I remember their last names and where it happened, so if anyone is interested I can try to find an article that gives more information on the trial or sentencing. When I was in high school, around 2001 to 2005, the new hot trend was anonymous online forums for each school. Think like 4chan or Reddit, but the entire forum was dedicated to the one single high school. As you can imagine, there was a ton of vicious gossip, sheet talking, catty drama, all the high school standards. This was back when anonymous online bullying was brand new to the world. Anyways, one forum would pop up, then eventually get taken down, and another would take its place, and so on. At one point the current one was taken down, and I ended up starting a new one with me as the admin. The usual bullshit built right back up, and there was a particular girl at school who was often the topic of many threads. She was arguably the most popular girl in school, and there were a ton of posts attacking her with vicious rumors and hateful comments, in addition to lots of people coming to her defense with glowing praise. It was intense, AMD hard to believe that the whole school spent so much time and energy thinking about this one popular girl. One day as I was maintaining the site as admin, I noticed an option to make every anonymous user's IP address visible on their posts. Being the edgy little sheet I was, I immediately hit that button and all hell broke loose. It turns out that every single post about popular girl was made from the same IP address. One amateur sleuth decided to write it down and comb through the entire forum looking for a post by that same IP that was attached to an anonymous profile. Lo and behold, it turns out it was the popular girl's home internet IP that had been posting threads attacking her with horrible rumors, then logging out and back in as another user and coming to her own rescue. This pattern happened in literally hundreds of posts going back months. The blowback was swift and brutal, as she also spent time attacking her own IRL friends in addition to herself. She was ostracized by the popular crowd and became a pariah for the next few months, at which point she ended up moving across the country and starting new somewhere else. In retrospect, I feel terrible for my role in all this, especially because it was obviously due to some undiagnosed mental issues and struggles that she was going through, and the reaction from the school was certainly not helpful. Instead of her getting the support and help that she actually needed, she lost her entire social support system and many friends she had since childhood. She's doing good now, though. He was the absolute coolest type of popular kid. Principal's son, played every sport, dated the hottest chicks, hosted the best parties, went on the coolest vacations. He was friends with everyone including the misfit types. Then something started changing about him. He became very irritable and angry all the time. It became normal to hear him yelling at people in the hallways between classes. He stopped taking care of his personal hygiene. During class he would just lay his head down and stare at the wall with a vacant expression. Anytime you'd ask him if he was alright he'd get mad, so people essentially just stopped talking to him altogether. One day news got out that he had a large tennis ball sized tumor growing in his brain. We were all completely blown away. He was flown to a hospital out of state for emergency surgery, and he was all anyone could talk about for weeks. But months went by and no one had heard from him or his family. None of the teachers would tell anyone what happened to him. His social media as well as his father's were both totally dead. His phone was off. They hired a new principal. Eventually he became an afterthought. We continued to live life without him. As far as anyone was concerned he'd simply disappeared. To this day no one has a completely clear understanding of what happened. His dad sent out Christmas cards a few years after his son's class had graduated that sort of summarized what had happened during the years they had been silent. They'd moved to the same state where they performed his surgery. They apologized for leaving everyone behind. It came with a family picture. He was completely different. He was in a wheelchair. He was frail and small. His skin was pale. His eyes were vacant and empty. He had a massive scar on the side of his head. It was so sad. Sometimes I think about him. He was such a great kid whose life was completely destroyed by something so ridiculously out of his control. His misfortune really puts life into perspective. We absolutely have to make the most of it, because in a literal instant, everything could be taken away. Beautiful mixed girl who was a cheerleader in high school. She was like 5'3" with amazing boobs and the bubbliest of butts. Everyone was in love with her. I sat behind her in several classes. Seating was alphabetical and her name was in front of mine. Whenever she had to wear her cheerleading uniform, the way our desks were designed and how she sat, the skirt would always be like halfway up showing her ass. It was permanently embedded in my spank bank and carried me through high school. She got pregnant senior year by the school thug, who is in prison now for murder. She dropped out and got a JED point. Flash forward around 6 years. I come back home from college and my best friend from home said he had a surprise for me. We go to a strip club about 30 minutes out of town. Walk in and there she is working the floor, wearing a neon green mesh dress and yellow thong. She greets us, but has no clue as to who I am. She looked a little rundown and rode hard, but it was still her. I probably dropped $200 that first night on tipping her and VIP dances. I go back the next night, and while in the VIP room she solicited me for an act of prostitution, hand job, that I agreed to. It became obvious I was only going there for her, so I was drunkenly about to tell her who I was when she slipped me her number and said just deal with her directly. I'm on cloud 9 thinking this was her way of saying ask her out. I text her suggesting drinks or a movie. She then says she can just come over, then gives me the price. She became pretty much a full-blown prostitute. I've probably had like 30 encounters with her, not proud to admit. We are friends for the most part, even told her about high school, but she has no memory of me from then. Our star QB was a phenomenal athlete who had all kinds of big time offers, but was an arrogant, bullying douche with wealthy and locally powerful family connections who handed him everything and taught him he was better than everyone else. He was the kind of kid whose parents bought him a brand new decked out truck for his 16th birthday. Basically, he was the villainous asshole from every teen movie you ever saw. He turned down offers to big time football schools to sign with the local college that offered his HS girlfriend a track scholarship. He got a full ride with thousands left over each semester to cover living expenses when he wasn't named a starter over their returning freshman all-conference QB. After a few days of practice, he quit football. His girlfriend broke up with him right after that and started dating the starting QB. They're married and have like 5 kids now. Popular QB douche lost his scholarships when he quit. He flunked out of school by the end of his freshman year. He eventually wound up taking a job driving an armored car, which wasn't great, but it was a decent job for a guy who had no debts and a house given to him. Then on Black Friday a few years later, he decided to steal a bag of cash from Walmart instead of driving it to the bank. He just tucked it under his shirt and walked away, thinking no one would notice. It had a whopping $11K in it. He turned it in a few days later without opening it. Needless to say, he lost his job and became a felon. Now he works as a personal trainer and supports himself selling steroids and other illegal substances. He was my old roommate. Very rich, posh kid. Spoiled as ever. Got to know everybody in the school and was the most known person. Was all a plan. Rumor spread of assault to his old roommates. Later turned out to be true as I woke up to him assaulting me. That morning still makes me sick. I'll add a case. I decided to speak out. Nobody believed me. I mean to them. It was a guy speaking out about the most popular kid in our school, who was also a POC. I didn't make this an issue, but oh boy he sure did. As the case went on, this guy pulled every card in the book. Racist, homophobic. He had some underlying insecurities about his own sexuality. In this case, made those come to fruition. Inadvertently he took out his insecurities on inebriated/asleep men of our college. He's suspended for 2 whole years, never coming back. Other colleges won't accept him. He tried to sue me for defamation of character. I'm just glad it's all over. So yeah, things kinda collapsed for him, and I couldn't be better. PS. He wanted to go into medical for anesthesiology. The reason why he's suspended is for sexual assault, with the majority of the cases being asleep individuals. That gives me chills still to this day. My cousin was really popular in his school and always made sure people had something for lunch or a jacket if it's cold or whatever. His part of the family didn't have much and they'd always refuse if anyone offered. One summer he and his buddies were swimming and one friend wasn't partaking. My cousin's best friend pushed this guy into the pool and stood there laughing as he sank to the bottom, supposedly sulking from the prank. No one knew that the guy was staying out of the pool because he couldn't freaking swim. My cousin realized first and tried to swim to save him, but by then it was too little too late. The kid was half drowned and everyone was too small to pull him up in time. They were all freshmen, so picture the scrawniest 14-year-olds ever. Cousin just started spiraling down from there. Gangs, drugs, teenage pregnancy. He was in and out of rehab for a while working on it. He really did want to be a good father, since my uncle wasn't that great to him. And so that was really his motivation. While he was in there I guess his tolerance for shooting went way back down. Some heroin got snuck in and he tried to take a light hit, and without compensating for his new tolerance levels he odd point. My least favorite part is his 2 little girls. My cousin's whole family is too emotionally attached to let them be adopted, and too pissed that him and baby mama were never married to fully take them in. Poor kids get traded around now. I'm a high school graduate, and I have 2 stories about 2 kids that were popular for a time as well as personal friends. The first guy is named Israel. I've known him since middle school, and we used to hang out during lunch every day and sometimes fight/wrestle with him and his friends against me and some of my friends for fun. We ended up in the same high school together as well, but didn't hang out quite as much. We both had our own general cliques. I want to say sophomore year he and one of his friends decided to rob a kid and his friend in his apartment at gunpoint in exchange for a pound of weed he was holding. The conversation went south and the kid ended up getting shot and robbed. Israel and his friend fled the scene and the other guy survived. Israel went to jail for this, and I haven't seen him since then. The crazy part is I lived in that apartment complex for a time after the incident and accidentally met the kid, so I got to hear the story from him too. Second guy was named Alex. He was a more recent friend of mine. He worked at a car dealership with his dad for a while and got good money doing it. We'd hang out in his car or my house or the scatter park and just drink and party. We actually didn't like each other when we first met because of a small fight that broke out between us when he showed up to one of my parties with a gallon of Jack and started getting too reckless with it. He wanted to fight on my front lawn, but I finally decided it wasn't a good reason, place, or time for that. We got to be really good friends, and it was fun for a while. But long story short, he moved to Arizona, got into heavy gang activity, and was finally killed in a shootout against a rival gang. .I.P. Alex. I'm from the UK. In year 7, I was pretty mean to people. I swore at everyone including teachers. I didn't do any work and didn't make an attempt to learn. And I was overall a horrible kid. All the other popular kids thought I was really cool, and they'd all be friends with me. But in year 8, I came out as a transgender girl. Of course all the popular kids thought I was a freak of nature, so they all stopped liking me. I thought everything over, and started being a little nicer, and started working harder in lessons. Most of the school began to hate me more and more as the news that I was trans spread. This was when other people who were more like me came up to me and started taking to me. That sprung really close friendships that I didn't even think was possible. My old friends weren't close and were really mean, which sprung really meaningful relationships. I started dating one of my friends when I got to year 10th, but she met someone hotter than me, so she framed me for cheating so she could date them instead. This was so long ago, but I still vividly remember her former friend coming up to me while I was in tears to comfort me. She was the only person who believed me at the time, so we spent about a year being friends and getting to know each other until we both found out we were in love with each other and quickly became really close partners. Fast forward 4 years later, and we are happily married and living together. I know this is the opposite of the question. No longer being popular was what my life as perfect as it is now, but I've never really shared all of this fully, and it was nice to think about it all. I tried to think of who this happened to, only to realize it was me. I used to hang with the popular crowd, but I tried to make sure I had friends in every group. I used to get bullied when I was in middle school, so I always tried to make sure everyone felt comfortable in whatever friend group in was hanging out in. I wasn't extremely popular, but everyone knew me, and I hung out with the popular kids. One time after school we were going to hang out with a group of popular kids and 2 of the boys met up with me earlier in the day. I started to get uncomfortable because they were asking me why I'd never had a boyfriend and how I hadn't had my first kiss. They both offered to kiss me. I was flattered that I had a boy's attention for once, but I said no because they both had girlfriends. They persisted, one saying his girlfriend wouldn't mind, and the other saying he was breaking up with his girlfriend the next day. Curiosity, pressure, and my own poor judgment made me say okay. I gave them both a quick peck. I felt so uncomfortable in the weeks that followed because I quickly realized that one wasn't breaking up with his girlfriend and both girls definitely did care. When one couple finally broke up a month later, I felt so bad I told the girlfriend, hoping the fact that they were broken up would make her care less. Everyone found out that I made not only 1, but 2 guys cheat on their girlfriends, and I did not hang out with the popular crowd after that. It was pretty damaging for my image and I didn't know what to do because I myself just wanted to feel accepted, and I felt that no one saw it from my side and no one cared what they guys did. I was a hoe. They were just players. I'm not trying to make excuses though. I knew it was wrong and I should have just said no. It took me until I was 22 to feel comfortable saying no to men making me feel uncomfortable. There was a popular rich girl I went to school with, and she would just give people shit all the time, constantly bullying everyone, or getting her rich boyfriend to do it. She was always judging everyone for being poor compared to her. Everyone she hung around with had to submit to this behavior without any qualms. In grade 12 she got a new boyfriend. He was popular, but actually very nice to everyone. About a year later after graduation she got pregnant with his kid and they planned a wedding. My boyfriend at the time was best friends with this guy. Mind you, I saw her once after high school, and she wouldn't even acknowledge my presence, even though my boyfriend was trying to introduce me to her without knowing I already knew her. So they planned a stag/stajet before the wedding. During the stag they decided to go dune buggying. Well, I guess the groom hit a rough patch of forest and was basically decapitated. This girl almost had a perfect life with perfect ending. Now she's pregnant, not married, and the child won't have a dad. She ended up becoming a nurse, which most bullies do, or they end up in MLMs, since this was a small town. I stumbled across her on Instagram. She seems to be doing alright, but it's a lot easier to get on with life when you are rich. I always felt bad for his death, and had nothing but sympathy for his friends and family. But not gonna lie, it felt good to watch her life fall apart after seeing her treat people like shit for years and years. Chillada, who was really popular, hid a motion sensor camera in the girls' gym locker room and the girls' locker room and the track house. The track house was used for after school practice for the cheerleaders, girls soccer players, and softball. Often they'd shower there, because the showers were more private and the soccer and softball players also practiced, even if it was muddy. The camera was found after a pipe busted in the gym locker room, and it was near where her camera was. Teachers thought it was one of the gym coaches. While the investigation was going on, the locker rooms were closed for remodeling. They then checked all changing areas in the school and those were also closed for remodeling or repairs, which we thought was weird because the track house was brand new. She was caught, partly because her friends sold her out, and there was a rumor that a detective had to go through the footage and saw her retrieving the cameras, and they caught her face. She apparently was posting the videos of girls changing on a forum and fat shaming some. She was selling the shower videos online. She almost went to jail for distribution of child pornography, even though she was a child too, 15 over 16 I think. She was lucky enough to just have to change high schools. No one knew if they were taped, but every girl assumed the worst. The two male coaches that were targeted came back to finish the school year. One transferred to a different county after, and the other decided to quit being a gym coach and started teaching economics. He even gave up his spot as head coach of the softball team. He took a break from it for a year and then went back to helping out. She ruined a lot of lives, and for what? I ended up seeing her again after everything. I think it was a senior year. She umpired at the baseball field and was umpiring my sister's softball game. She recognized me and apologized. I assumed it was because she bullied a lot of girls, including me. Completely forgot about the camera thing until I told my friend about it. I went to school back in the 70s, and I'm pretty sure things were very different back then. There was a kid named Jay. Everyone liked him. He was really smart and talented. He used to draw these amazing comic books and he shared them with us, and they were really good. He was the guy who was going places. We had this crazy ex-marine math teacher, shaved head, pretend drill sergeant type, who just loved to prove he was in charge. So one day out of the blue, instead of letting us into the classroom, crazy teacher lines everyone up in the hallway against the walls on both sides. He starts yelling at us for no clear reason. He was pacing back and forth down the hall between the lines on both sides shouting. As he passed, kids would step out and silently pretend to be at attention and saluting him in a mocking way. He didn't see it. So Jay sees a kid do this, and he burst into laughter. He was trying to keep it in, which caused it to sound like a horse whining. The teacher spun around and grabbed Jay by the throat and slammed him into the lockers, and he hit his head pretty hard. He broke into tears, but didn't make any sound. It was really weird. Jay suddenly completely changed. He instantly went from a always happy kid to not speaking to anyone, and he seemed afraid. About 2 weeks after the incident, he stopped coming to school. I didn't see Jay for about 6 years. When I saw him, he looked really bad. Thin and sickly. Then about 10 years later, I heard he was a heroin addict. I know he was a heroin addict for another 5 years, and then I've never heard of him again. Jay, I hope you got clean and lived a great life. Actually, a pretty sad story. There was this family whose youngest daughter I hung out with through all of middle school. I went to a really fancy private school, but went for free, since my dad was a teacher there. My family was solid middle class, but most other students were super rich and led pretty privileged lives. My friend's family seemed perfect. Mom was drop dead gorgeous, owned a clothing store that my friend could pick designer clothing from whenever she wanted. Dad was a successful doctor, super handsome and charming. They lived in a huge house, got everything they asked for, held parties at their house, where we could drink and smoke and do whatever we want. All the stereotypical things you would think of, and all things my middle school brain thought were perfect. About 4/5 years later, I had lost touch with my friend, but still saw her brother on a pretty regular basis. One day he told me that him and his sister thought their dad had been acting weird, like he was up to something. So they decided to follow him and see where he was going and what he was doing. They ended up finding him in a hotel room with a much younger woman. It ended up getting even worse from there. They told their mom about the woman and everything came crumbling apart. They found out he had been with this woman for years, bought her a condo, took her on his business trips, even brought her to their family cabin in Coronado. Their mom left him, and instead of taking any responsibility, the dad blamed the kids for their divorce. He said none of it would have happened if they wouldn't have told their mother. Pretty much said everything was their fault, which is a huge responsibility to place on children's shoulders. They ended up divorcing. Mom closed her store, sold their fancy house. The divorce was super ugly and their parents moved apart and moved on. Point in retrospect, I understand now how their perceived perfection had a lot to do with material objects and outward appearances. But when all of that unfolded, I remember being so grateful for my old and boring, hippie parents who had parental boundaries and gave no shits about whether or not I thought they were cool. When I was in high school, there were these two popular twins who everyone knew and loved, along with their group of 4 friends who were all genuine great people. Every morning you'd hear them chatting away across the school, laughing and having fun. They were the kind of guys who'd compliment you on something they didn't notice yesterday and got along with literally anyone. The two twins were praised by nearly everyone, including their teachers, because they were just so unusually intelligent academically and socially. They could explain any concept and a 5-year-old could understand. One of them was even making up his own physics formulas and fact-checking with our app physics teacher. They worked at a place in my city called Canada Olympic Park, now known as Winsport. We have a bobsled track at Winsport that they regularly rode shovels down on. One day all 6 of those guys decided that it would be innocent good fun if they brought their 3 own custom-made sleds, and they all decided to go in pairs, one right after another. If I'm telling the story right, unfortunately there was a cement barrier chained across the track about halfway down that they didn't know of prior because it was rarely used. The first 2 guys saw the barrier coming and jumped off, only suffering minor injuries. I think one was even unscathed. But everyone after them hit that barrier full force, severely crippling 2 of them and killed both of the twins. One of the twins was decapitated by the chain and the other slammed into the wall. That was the one and probably only time I think I've ever seen a whole school in utter despair, including the teachers. When we learned about it, that whole day was dedicated to crying. Nobody could take how we just lost 2 amazing individuals that were so deeply loved by our entire school. I still remember the app physics teacher just absolutely crumble when she heard the news. Edit, hit submit by accident. Edit 2. Here's a news story. Dang, this was long. Here's a TDLR to help out. TLDR. Arrogant popular kid is abusive to girlfriend. Popular kid meets girlfriend's brother, hits first and gets his $$ served to him, loses his looks, last of his dignity, and the tad of smarts he possibly had. Point popular kid J in school was an extremely rude and arrogant jerk to everyone, insulting people for fun and very aggressive, had gotten kicked out of several schools for throwing punches on other students, and, according to his girlfriend, C, he had even gone after a teacher. C and I had an art class and lunch together, and she wore a hijab, comes in later, and always had long sleeves or a light jacket, and became a bit tense and quiet when J was around. Not by much, but by a little bit. The jacket and long sleeves weren't a huge flag, since the art classroom is usually cold throughout the school year. The back of the lunchroom's kitchen, where the walk-ins and freezers are placed right against the class's wall, and the heating was already botched and messed up at that area of the school. When someone would mention him, she would get a little quieter and would always find a way to direct it to another topic. X, you and J still going strong? Yes, we will be going out somewhere this weekend. What do you guys have planned? Not sure. Do you know any good restaurants around here? And then it'll switch to restaurant only talk. She was very good at hiding that her relationship wasn't right, and I believe few people not trained in what to look for and signs, or haven't been in or seen a similar situation, would know something was up. I had suspicions, but no proof, and I kept back, hoping a time would pop up I could try to help her. And one day I was so thankful for appeared when she accidentally dumped Mod Podge on herself and marked all over her clothes and splashed part of her face, barely missing part of her hijab. I handed her a towel and began to help her clean up the mess. When washing part of her face, a bruise slid into visibility from under her sleeve before she quickly readjusted it. I noticed a dark mark at the far edge of her right eye, poking very slightly from under her hijab. She looked at me and realized I had seen it, and I helped her cover it up. telling her to please get help from someone. It'll only get worse and she did, but didn't go how she, or I, expected. The next day of school, her brother had gathered a group of friends from another district, and he let them into the school. Jay decided to be his normal arrogant self, and went for a kick into the brother's groin. Jay ended up losing all of his front teeth, received a severe concussion, and was served a broken jaw, leg, and arm. The bloodstain stayed from the middle of freshman year throughout the end of my senior year, and trust me, no one, even though of hurting her since. We stayed in touch for a bit. Her brother ended up off as self-defense, but his friends got into legal trouble for entering another school, ended up with a huge fine and community service if memory serves, but she told me they said it was worth it. J. On the other hand though, he switched schools and last I heard of him, about 3 years after the fact, he was still catching up to sophomore year lessons. I have some stories from middle school and high school when there were truly popular kids as a clique, but the best example of turnaround in literal seconds was in 5th grade. There was this bully kid who was generally fairly popular, albeit probably out of fear, and he used to join our soccer games at recess. He constantly had to have his way, always getting up in your face if you challenged him on something. Anyway, I did, or said something to piss him off that day, so he came sprinting toward me to teach me a lesson or something. Honestly, I have no idea what my plan was at that moment, but I got on well with most people, and I was pretty tired of his attitude, so I distinctly remember just sort of holding my ground waiting for impact. When he was about 2 feet in front of me, I took one step slightly out of his way and he went to adjust, and just tripped, and fell flat on his face. I took a step or two back, kind of in shock at what happened. He was pissed. He got up, began to walk toward me with blood, rage in his face, like he was going to murder me, and then he fell again. He got up, crying, and just walked away. He wasn't in my homeroom, so we were never in class together. I never saw him again. Somehow, in the mythology of kids recalling events, the official story among the students was that I tripped him twice and told him off, and he ran away in fear and left the school. In reality, I don't think I actually said anything to him after he fell. Needless to say, nobody feared him any longer and people didn't really talk about him after a week or so. It was already very late in the spring and there were only a couple of weeks left of school anyway, so maybe he got sick or something. We moved away that summer. Who knows, maybe he'd actually have killed me the next year if we hadn't. When he died of spinal meningitis, was a very popular guy, one of my best friend's brothers. Happened when we were in 8th grade, I think. He was like a senior or junior. Weird thing is, like 3 kids died at that school from spinal meningitis during my high school career. Also there was an Eagle Scout, super popular, real nice dude. But one day during the last weeks of school, when they were throwing all the senior parties, he got drunk and drove his truck, with 4 or 5 other kids in the back. They all died, except the Eagle Scout. He ended up going to prison for a while. Also, my best friend died 2 weeks before graduation. I was told he died of strep throat. By this time my mother had kicked me out, and I was living in MN with my dad. It killed me inside 4 years. I still think of him almost every day, and I see his brother on bus stop benches on my way home from work. Actually, Friday I was behind his brother in traffic, but Rich probably doesn't remember me, so I just flew past him cause I was running late. I think my school was weird, because so many kids died. There were suicides, car accidents, rare illnesses. A kid ran over the chorus teacher once. Her husband was my piano teacher. Just really weird. But that big of a school either. I think I would have graduated with like 130 kids if I didn't get sent to my dad's, where I graduated with 22 kids and 1 died of cancer and my ex-girlfriend's sister killed herself. This isn't their life falling apart, but at least their high school reputation. During the summer before 10th grade, a popular kid was being really stupid and stole his brother's car. Now you might think, who would be stupid enough to do that? Well, he'd actually been taking his parents' cars for quite some time. I was taking driver's ed at the time and was in the middle of a drive. We are pulling up to an intersection, red light, and we are slowing down. Out of nowhere, he comes, going 50 on a 30 and rear ends us. We spin around, and the right back tire is completely shredded. He pulls up ahead, and my driving instructor attempts to pull on our faked up car out of the way of traffic. After he moves the car to the middle of the road, we get out. I look to see where his car was. I didn't know it was him at the time, and I see him standing there. I thought I recognized his standing pose, and what do you know? I do recognize him. I went to middle school with him as well. The police come a few minutes later and get everything sorted out. Turns out he had a friend in the car that ran away before the police arrived, and some bystanders even got a video of it. Everything got sorted out with me, and I went home. I wasn't injured thankfully, but from what I think he got some kind of civil disobedience thingy. He still acts like he's done nothing wrong, and when he talked to me at school afterwards he was like, "At you good bro," and I was like, how the fuck do I answer a question like that? Point another story is this guy and this girl were dating, and this girl who I'm friends with was super controlled by her boyfriend. He would only let her be with him and no other guy. He would send her long texts about how she is such a cheater because her best friend's boyfriend took a shower at her house, and overall the general control freak in a relationship. He never beat her though, which is good. Well anyway, they had a nice relationship for a month or so, and then the remaining 9 months of her relationship were rocky, and he was always behaving like this. I didn't know her too well when she was dating the guy. Probably wouldn't have been able to either, because he's a dick, but I'm glad she got out of it. We always talk about how we don't like him, and she shows me screenshots of his texts and tells me stories about how stupid he is. She's one of the nicest people ever, and people knew her for that. When they broke up, he tried to tell everyone she cheated when in reality it was him that caused the relationship to fail. They didn't break up because he cheated, she dumped him because he's an idiot. He's now lost all social status, and the only people who like him are his close friends. Graduation night. The most popular 4 guys at my high school were out driving down Glendora Mountain Road. These guys had gotten full ride scholarships to various schools to play college football. Back to the story. As the name implies, GMR is a mountainous road. Well, these idiots, all under 21 mind you, got blackout drunk and high. One of the 4 decides he wants to ride on the hood of their Jeep as they drive along. So, while they're driving, he tries to clamber onto the hood. He made it there even. But this blocks the view of the driver, so he didn't see a major bump in the road and didn't slow down for it. They hit the bump at 45 miles per hour and hood guy goes flying and lands face first on a big rock. He died before they made it to the hospital. Well, people don't just fly off of hoods and break their face in half on rocks on a usual day, so the police are called by hospital staff and they start investigating. The police found out about everyone being drunk and high. They find out about all the rest. They charged all the other passengers with manslaughter. Can't remember if voluntary or involuntary. 2 of the guys lost their scholarships and had their admissions cancelled completely. One had his scholarships cancelled but was still allowed to attend uni. And, well, the 4th guy's dead. The parents of all 4 families were friends too, and after that event they took turns suing one another. They might still be at it, but none of us are sure anymore. 1 Drive down a popular mountain road destroyed 4 lives in a matter of seconds. Ultimately, this was on the 4 popular kids, since there were layers of stupidity involved. I knew the guy who died, and literally the day before graduation he said he would rather die young than become old and have life be painful. I guess he technically got what he wanted, but definitely not in the way anyone was expecting. R.I.P. Jacob. Bonus story. One sophomore also got murdered by her younger brother by being stabbed about 30 times. Their parents had gone out to dinner and came home to their lives being functionally over. They never recovered from that one. In my first year of secondary school, year 7, the tallest kid in my year group, almost 6 feet, and also the only black kid, decided to try and pick on me, the shortest boy in the year group, about 4 feet at the time, and the only brown kid. During lunch. Specifically, I had just bought a spicy chicken burger from school at a place we called the Hole in the Wall, and I was walking away from the wall down the side alley, and he was there with all the popular boys from our year group, and he basically tried to rob me of my chicken burger, but kind of in a show-off fashion. Like he was doing it for a laugh. Yo, show off to the lads. Anyway, I told him to fuck off and buy one, and then he pushed me and tried to take my burger. I quickly chucked it in my drawstring bag, and then he pushed me again, but I basically grabbed his shoulders as he came in to push me, and I pulled myself up and gave him the cleanest headbutt. He fell straight on his ass in front of everyone, and then was laying there on his back, to which there was a lot of laughter. He then shouted, I'm gonna fuck you up badly, and then as he was getting up, for good measure cause he was almost twice my height, I roundhouse kicked him in the face. TKO. I didn't stick around to see him get back up after that as I left and ate my burger in peace, but I was told he got up fully embarrassed to have been knocked out by a midget. By the time the day had ended, everyone knew I had knocked him out, and he was getting mocked raw for it. Incidentally, no one ever really tried to fuck with me after that. Here's from a mate of mine. Secretly, one of the popular girls was secretly pushing one of the more quieter, but liked by many girl to suicide. Nobody knew they were interacting with one another bar the odd morning in the corridor. That didn't seem of ill intent, just a general morning to a fellow classmate. In DMS, I think Facebook, she constantly went at the girl telling her how useless she was. It was her fault her dad committed suicide with how much of a failure she is at life. Was a sporty girl, but never came first in any events. The only go fair grades in school, nothing too spectacular, but were not bad. And was blamed for her father's drug addiction for being a needy child. She had some kind of mental disability or disorder. I can't remember exactly, but I think it was a mixture of being on the functional side of the autism spectrum mixed with some OCD, etc. Girl couldn't take it anymore and offed herself, not before spreading the DMs to some of her close friends who then spread them around the school. Popular girl is hated by everybody despite her coming off as a genuinely nice person beforehand, not the typical bratty popular girl at all. She dropped out of dance and sports and was not allowed on the school teams after the incident was made public. She lost her boyfriend and none of the other boys want to even come near her. If she asks for a date, nobody is her friend bar one kid who only tolerates her if they need to do group work, as nobody wants to be her partner. Apparently she's now depressed and is on suicide watch as she tried, but failed 3 times, to take her own life. Nobody in school gives a crap. Some even goes as far to tell her to just do it. You've made everybody in school sad for killing her, and so on, as she was a beloved girl by students and teachers, just for being a pleasant, helpful and well-mannered girl. I was never really popular, but at least well known in middle school. I wasn't friends with most, kept my circle small, but people I didn't even know would yell Shaggy down the hall at me and throw the peace sign or wave. I looked a spitting image of Shaggy. Well, I quickly became FWB with this one girl. No actual meaningful relationship. Well, we went and did the nasty behind the school library in the woods. We finished and walked into the library to talk. I realized I made a mistake in seconds when she mentioned she demanded a relationship. I lost my virginity that day, and of course I was a nervous wreck, busted no rubber and everything. I wanted to cry. She said she would blackmail me yada yada right to my face. I pretty much said, do your worst, and left. If she wasn't crazy about it, would have considered it. 3 days later I got called to the office. A few cops and her parents were there. Was told mine would show up shortly. Well, they arrived to find out that this girl told the whole school I rapped and beat her in the woods. My mind went blank. I was furious. I denied it and told them exactly what happens, and you know they always believe the girl, guilty until proven innocent. Kicked right off the middle school football team. We were as anyways. Well, a police investigation was inevitable. After the investigation, our phone convos were extracted, and hers with other people telling her plans to spread the lie. She quickly moved states. No one seen her again. 5 years look after I got a random picture of a baby in a seat, like a toddler, 1 maybe 2 years old, and that she'd said guess whose it is. Didn't reply. 5 years later she was still trying to fuck with me. It was put out that I didn't do it, and the school tried to save my rep. But it's middle school, so of course rumors will continue to spread. Didn't have a healthy relationship with anyone till I switched high schools. My current girlfriend always had a crush on me in middle school, and her friends tried everything to get her not to like me. She believed the rumor, but she actually knew me as a good person. I met her after high school after my ex cheated on me and got knocked up by her own ex. Of course I went on a sex binge after that, as I want to think most do. She invited me over after seeing me working the drive at a fast food joint, didn't even fuck, and I fell in love that day. Been with her since and I'm 22. Only good thing to come out of it. I guess TLDR lose my virginity and girl spreads rumor I rapped her. Reputation dead. Investigation happened. Current girlfriend saw through it in a way, and I'm okay now. Lost friends along the way. Kicked off football team. Transfer from another local high school, immediately made it to the super popular cast at my high school. He was great at sports, was part of the theater club, and did his best to visit every club and help as he did so. Even in the booth at basketball games, while myself and the rest of the broadcast club would be doing our thing. Only issue was, he'd try to do it all without any input from those in the clubs. He was a know-it-all and thought he could do anything. We still loved him, because he was always good to everyone. Word got out, though, that the reason he transferred to our high school was due to him cheating by way of acquiring the digital test answer sheets and selling test answers to the school populace. Soon it was found that many people who usually get low scores on tests were getting incredible grades on tests consistently, and paper quizzes were still failing. No one yet suspected the guy, though. First week was chalked up to simply people doing well. But the second week of this happening raised eyebrows, and a lot of kids were seen going to places on campus to meet up. Turns out he got access to the secure server by watching one of the on-site administrators typing in his password. He watched the admin type his password and remembered it. Then he set up a fake account on the school's administrative server, and it basically gave him access to the school's test database and access to every digitized grade book. Teachers noticed changes to grades they hadn't done and began to suspect that there was definite foul play. Teachers and the ed department of the school targeted the kids whose grades were normal looking so as not to arise much suspicion, and over the next 5 weeks we were questioned. I was among the first to be questioned. I hypothesized it might be the popular transfer kid who it was rumored to have been his fault for this exact thing. I guess after many people suspected it was him, popular kid got called to the ed department. They searched his school issued laptop and found the evidence. About 100 gigabytes of files for every test made at the time as of a couple days prior. At that moment, according to eyewitnesses, he cried and admitted it. He was expelled. Sorry for long post. One of my good friends in school used to be very quiet and never really talked. He started making friends who were popular and on the football team, and he became pretty popular, I guess. After he came out of his shell of awkwardness in my class, we didn't have a ton of people, so everyone was kind of friends with everyone. No one really bullied each other, but they started taking him with them to parties and whatnot, and along with it came the drinking and pills. His drink of choice, if I remember correctly, was wild turkey. He ended up in the hospital at least 3 times that I know of from alcohol poisoning. His whole family had problems with depression, I think. I remember his mom making both him and his brother take little Ziploc baggies full of vitamins and other things with them when they would go out for the day or weekend. Anyway, he stopped going out almost completely. About halfway through our junior year, both he and his younger brother, who was a sophomore, dropped out of school to play Halo professionally. He came over to my house only once. After that, he just randomly showed up at my door. I was glad to see him, and he looked absolutely fine. He said he dropped drinking and that he was feeling good. So we played video games and caught up on how he was doing and what had been going on in his life, mostly because I worried about him. He seemed really happy, like to the point where it was more like he was trying to force me to believe he was happy. It scares me now thinking about it, but back then I was 16 to 17 and had no clue about mental health. He pulls out these 2 pills and takes them and tells me he's going to pass out, and when he does he will wake up like 27 minutes later. He passes out, wakes up, I shit you not, exactly 27 minutes later, and goes about it like nothing happened. He left a little after that and went back home. A month or so later, I get a phone call from a friend telling me that he killed himself. Apparently he had gotten in an argument with his patents and grabbed a shotgun and blew his head off right in front of them and his brother. His dad has to be taken to the hospital to get skull fragments removed from his face. I never saw any of them again. Whoever owned their house had it condemned, and I last heard that his mom died about a year or so ago. No clue where his brother or dad ended up. two stories. The first was Paul, who was somewhat popular and something of a jerk. In my English class we were all quietly reading a short story and the teacher was doing paperwork. Paul turned around in his seat and tried talking to the girl behind him. The teacher shushed him. A few minutes later he quietly got up, walked over to the teacher's desk, and peed in the trash can. Then he zipped up and strolled out of the classroom. The teacher was stunned, and the class went from quiet to uproar. Then the teacher rushed after him. And that was the last I saw of Paul. I heard it was drugs. The second was Michael. Always Michael, never Mike. He was popular with the preppy crowd that seemed to run our high school. He was our school drum major, in the band, in drama, on all the important clubs, like yearbook, prom organizer. He took home economics, and was close friends with all the girls. He was in our school's Christian club, and very active in it. He was also very effeminate. But his friends all denied he was gay. The girls he dated said he was saving himself. He tried going to a Christian college after high school, but came back and took community college. He never married and didn't seem to date after high school. He died of brain cancer before turning 40. His huge friend group showed up to the funeral, along with his boyfriend. That's when everyone who was still in denial realized he had been living a lie. 1 week before midterms, kid took a sheet in the sink. I used to be on the same swim team as him, helped him improve his form a lot when swimming. He was always kinda dumb, always trying to be funny. But damn, this was just really faking stupid. His mom stopped talking to him for a few months too. Some kid faked a trash can. 3 rumor of a freshman popular girl losing her virginity to a junior in his van. She used to be one of my best friends in elementary, until I realized she was kinda a bitch. Even though she was really popular, all her friends hated her. Kinda glad I got out of that circle in elementary school. Was a really toxic environment. 1 and 2 were recorded and posted online. Don't think 3 was recorded, but if it was, that's faked up. 4 kid who rode my bus was slowly succumbing to a drug addiction. He was always saying, "I'm not an addict like my dad, I'm just a dealer." Needless to say, he was getting into some messy shit. He started asking my friend for money and started being really dumb with his drug use. He was popping pills while vaping and drink multiple 5-hour energy on the bus some days. Overall an annoying kid. One time he tried to force himself into a seat when there was no room and the kid sitting there wasn't having it. Everyone on the bus calls it the Rosa Parks incident. That seat is now seen as a problem seat. Haven't heard of him in a while, but he moved, cause he was getting in a lot of trouble at our school. Last time I heard his name, apparently he sent a bunch of shirtless pics to a bunch of girls on Snap 5. This one is kinda weird, but it's happening RN. There is this popular girl in my English class. I don't know much about this, but from what I hear she has a body count really high up there, a drug addiction, basically hoes herself for drugs, and may have multiple STDs. She has wavy brown hair, but one day she came to school with straight black hair and a giant pair of sunglasses. I assumed she was hungover and that's why she wore the glasses. Regardless, she is missing school a lot this quarter and it's getting worrying. All of these are high school experiences, and I'm only in my second year. This one kid, who was popular amongst the thugs of a school I went to, got from the top to the bottom real quick. I'm not sure if popularity between troubled kids is what you were looking for, but I assure you, you're in for a crazy one here. It was a school for students who hadn't done well in primary school. This meant that that school was full of rebels and troubled kids. There was one big group in particular that was especially bad, and that kid was basically at the top in terms of popularity. He solved all his problems with violence, and there was even one moment where the teacher pinned him down on the ground with a chair after he was rude to her for several weeks. One day, his group took it way too far and started picking students one by one, surrounding them, lifting them up, taking them to a corner, and beating them for 1 minute straight. They did the beating in a hidden place, so the teachers took a few days to notice. They had already done other shit like this before, but everyone was too scared to tell. Once they saw a part of our class come in with really muddy and dirty shoes, they started investigating. Some, me included, had been hiding in a tunnel where lots of mud builds up. So because of that they found out, and the police was called. That popular kid and some others got in real trouble, and he even threatened a few of us for what happened to him. Someone finally had the guts to tell the police of all the trouble they caused, including an incident where they threw fireworks at other students and stuffed them in their hoodies. Needless to say, the police was shocked to hear about all that, and they took action. The popular kid and a few others were put in a sort of detention home. As far as I understand, it was basically like prison for teens, except it's not as brutal, and you do get Sundays off. I only saw him once a few years ago, and it was a Sunday too, so I'm guessing he spent at least 3 years in that detention home. Not sure if he'll ever get out tbh. What he did was certainly comparable to torture, and I wouldn't be surprised if he had to spend a decade in there. Family-run Richmond company facing bizarre $8.5 million lawsuit. Blanchette Press and 7 family members named in court documents, all subject to judge's restraining order after millions allegedly deposited into Las Vegas hotel account in award-winning Richmond company, and the family members who operate it, is at the center of a bizarre $8.5 million lawsuit. River Road-based Blanchette Press and its US subsidiary, as well as Kim and Mary Ellen Blanchette and their 5 sons, Adam, Matt, Joel, Aaron and Mark, are all named in the suit filed in the US by a Texan couple, who claim to have been close friends of the Blanchettes. In the court documents, the couple, Heidi Hanna and Charles Hill, alleges the Blanchettes duped them out of $8.5 million, US, of their life savings, after being convinced last year to deposit the fortune into a Las Vegas hotel's escrow account. Although the money, according to the lawsuit, was to allow Joel Blanchette to take part in an invitation-only, high-roller poker game at the Wine Hotel, the couple says it was assured the $8.5 million was safe and returnable at any time. Over time, the couple grew suspicious and claims in the lawsuit that efforts to get the money back were rebuffed. Hannah and Hill allege they finally tracked Joel Blanchette down to a hotel in London, England, where he, according to the lawsuit, told them the entire Blanchette family had knowingly been enjoying spending the cash on private jets, luxury hotels and allegedly bought a condo in Falls Creek. 2 weeks ago, a judge in Harris County, Texas, granted a restraining order against the Blanchette family, preventing them from transferring or selling any assets, or withdrawing or spending more than $500 per day. None of the allegations have been proven in court, and the Blanchettes have yet to file a response. When asked to comment on the lawsuit by the News, Kim Blanchette, in an emailed statement, said the allegations against the companies, me and other family members are completely meritless and are being vigorously defended. The Blanchettes have hired the services of Houston-based Vinson & Elkins LLP, considered one of the top law firms in Texas. An evidentiary court hearing has been set in Texas for October 25th. It's not known if the Blanchettes are expected to appear in person. In 2011, Blanchette Press, an offset printing company that specializes in the design community and has a subsidiary based in Houston, Texas, was the big Canadian winner with 5 awards in the prestigious SAPI North American Printers of the Year competition. Hannah and Hill are involved in the design logo industry and say they started doing business with the Blanchettes in the mid-2000s. Over the years, claim the couple in the lawsuit, the relationship grew more personal, so much so that they began sharing Christmas and holidays together, and, not having children of their own, considered the Blanchette boys as part of their own family. The couple's Houston-based lawyer, Eric Lipper, told the News that Hannah and Hill had developed a solid trust of the Blanchettes, especially Joel. My clients have an American Express black card, which pretty much has no limits, said Lipper. Joel asked them to get him one. They did, which he paid off every month for a long time. Unfortunately, a lot of tragedy has struck in my community. The star quarterback from high school got super into drugs and partying just after high school. On Christmas Eve, he got drunk and took a cocktail of pills. Unintentionally odd and choked to death on his vomit that night, and they found him dead on Christmas Day. He was maybe 19 or 20. Another popular girl from high school was driving home from the local county fair during a storm and wrapped around a tree at age 19 and died on impact. That one shook the community. A former classmate of mine that was in all the honors classes with me in sports, and he was friends with all the jocks but genuinely friendly, had gotten really into traveling in the past few years. He was an engineer and saved all his cash and lived off ramen so he could travel every 2 months. He was always on a trip. I saw him post that he was off to Iceland for a trip, and a few days later, word came out that he had tragically fallen off a cliff while hiking in Iceland. It was devastating. He would have been 27 this year, another super popular kid who graduated 4 years after me, got his pilot license and came to own a plane. He went flying by himself and got in a fog storm, I think in the mountains, and he crashed. When I was in college I was in RAW, and there was this athletic guy who played a bunch of intramural sports but was an art major and really friendly and funny. He worked the front desk in our residence hall and we would always chat. He knew tons of people. One day he went running as always, and his heart just stopped in the middle of his run, and he collapsed in the middle of the road and never got back up. Such a good dude. The same year a car full of girls from a sorority were leaving the city to go to Florida for spring break. They had barely gotten on the highway when someone was in driving wrong direction and drove headfirst into them. 3 women died, and I sang at their service. Their parents spoke and I remember one of their dads was so grief-stricken. It was so sad. I know these were all about death, but I've been privileged to know of some amazing people. You just never know when your nickel is up. This happened a year ago. A girl that went with us on first and second years of college was perfect in every sense. At first point during the first year, when I knew only 4 people out of 80, she was the only one that stood out for me. Beautiful brown hair, gorgeous eyes, amazing smile, insane figure. All the boys were drooling over her, and she seemed nice. She would always say hello, no matter where we met. We talked a few times and she seemed insanely nice, like too nice and perfect to be true. And everyone said the same things about her, until she started revealing her true nature. Word started spreading that she talked trash behind others' backs. A dude said she was hitting on him at the club. A lot of other dudes said she was overly sexual towards them when needing some favors. I didn't believe the rumors until it happened to me. I was hanging out with a cute girl I liked from our college, but there was still nothing between us. We had a great time until she passed by and immediately went in for a hug with me while ignoring the girl. She wore a hot black dress, boobs pressing against my chest. My leg is held in between her legs. She's inches away from kissing me, eyes locked at each other. Now this cute, shy girl is watching this sexual encounter with a shocked, pale look on her face. And the girl asks me if I'm free later that night. I made up an excuse and told her we'll meet up other time, but it was too late as the cute girl already left. So I told this to few guys and they all said that it happened to a lot of other guys when they were around their girlfriends. Later that year she got engaged. We knew her boyfriend. When congratulating him, he said he wasn't engaged. Turns out she cheated the whole time. She got married, pregnant, dropped out of college. All the girls call her filthy names now. She came back as a partial student, but no one wants to be close to her. I did a terribly awful pro-revenge type thing to point a popular girl who we will call Eve. TW suicide. I trained for 4 years in army cadets getting ready for a military career. The week before my physical exam, Eve pushed me into a flight of stairs. This caused my hip to dislocate it for the first time ever. This was in the last week of school, so I took the week off to heal before the exam. The same girl who put me in hospital in the first year of school. She beat me up so badly I needed my appendix removed. The exam came, and I had an audible click in my hip and a very noticeable limp. This led to a more thorough medical, including x-rays, and I was diagnosed with a degenerative disease which meant I would be in a wheelchair in a few years. At the time this hit me like a train and led to a suicide attempt. Fast forward a few years, and I run into Eve at a charity event that I'm helping run. I'm in my wheelchair and singing at the event. Afterwards Eve approached me and said, "Oh my god, what happened to you? Did I do this in the last week of school?" I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Yes, Eve. If it wasn't for you, I would have had an amazing military career, as I have met many people with my condition who have lived full normal lives have even noticing the condition, especially if they keep fit. Thanks to you I lost so much." By that point I had lost everything, including my son's father. He left me because he couldn't handle my condition anymore. I honestly hope I shattered her reality that day. I hope she carries that guilt forever. A few stories. Freshman or sophomore year, a guy was trying to fight this one gay dude and everyone got out of class to see what it was about. Apparently, the gay dude started showing PPL a video of the other dude sucking the gay dude's dick. The girlfriend wasn't too pleased about that. I on the other hand, found his girlfriend attractive, and she was thick, so I'm like now she can be available. A guy met a girl when he was a sophomore, and she was a freshman. So senior year for me, and the guy comes around, and the girl's junior year, he started getting popular, since he was an athlete. Football and track. A health clinic came to our school to discuss that our school had one of the highest STD rates. There were some rumors spread and apparently, he cheated on his girlfriend with a few girls. A girl he had sex with announced it online. I don't think he had any STDs but he'd be the highest to be suspected of it, and then his girlfriend was single after that. She was beautiful after all, and well liked, and nice to me, but we didn't really ever talk. Not a few seconds. Story about karma and kind of connected to the second story. This guy I knew in high school, didn't really know him till senior year, liked to be a bully, just that annoying as that likes hitting you for no reason. Would kind of mess with PPL in a joking way, but still really annoying. Probably because he wanted to be well liked just like his friends, since they were all football players. And then I had heard he had a girlfriend and someone said he had been with since middle school, and who he had an on again off again relationship with. Months after our senior year ended in graduation, his girlfriend cheated on him with his good friend. One of the guys from the football team, the guy from the second story. I had felt bad for him at first, but then I remembered every single time he always would hit me, or do something to mess with me, and every time I was seconds away from slapping his ass in front of the teacher and students. Then I thought, that's okay. I already have my revenge. Lesson learned, don't be an ass to people, even if you think it's joking, it's still very annoying. Edit. By the way, in that last story, his girlfriend was GHICC, and I used to have a crush on her my freshman year till I found out about them. I don't think I'd date her after that, but I mean, we can talk. Big Samoan kid was a star player on our football team, I believe RB. He was super cool and funny when I had a class with him freshman year, but seemed to turn into a douchebag after joining the football team, and I don't know if he was a bully so much. Pretty big school with a lot of rich kids, but still big enough for everyone to find their own tribe. I was neither rich nor popular. Before being a geek or nerd was cool, but had a lot of friends in various groups. But he definitely threw his weight around when anyone would question him, or he didn't get his way. I didn't have friends with him by junior year. Most of these rich kids hit 16 and getting brand new cars. He came to school in a brand new souped up Subaru WRX, showing it off during lunch in the parking lot. Going to go off campus for lunch wasn't allowed unless you're a senior, but a lot of juniors still did it. A sophomore friend of mine, not super close, she and I talked once in a while, but didn't hang out, got in, and I remember thinking it wasn't a good idea because he was such a show off, and that car was a lot for a new driver, just felt dangerous. It's a weird moment I think about a lot now, and you can guess why. While out, he drove way too fast in a neighborhood, lost control, and wrapped the car around a tree. His seat was pushed so far back because he was such a big guy. Her head smashed into his headrest. She was brain dead immediately, and her parents pulled the plug later in the week. Another buddy of his, who was a douchebag, used to be pretty popular until everyone found out he had cheated on and physically assaulted his girlfriend, who was popular with everyone. So he kind of became a pariah, lived but broke his leg in multiple places. He lost everything. Instant pariah. Had to leave school. What may have been a possible football career was over. Near the end of senior year, I actually sat down and talked to him when I saw him at the YMCA, and he was saying he was appreciative that I even talked to him because nobody would. Even friends who knew it was an accident wouldn't hang out with him, and everyone basically moved on without him. I did explain that he became a huge douchebag with his success, size/athleticism, ego, etc., so he had alienated himself from any chance of redemption. I'm certain a lot of people were waiting for any reason to cut him out of their cliques. Obviously he didn't mean to do it, and had to learn a lot of really hard lessons the worst possible way, with the guilt that he killed someone, whether intentional or not. So I told him he just needed to accept that, accept he'd never change it, or change how people feel about it, and just use it to be better going forward. Nobody was going to feel bad for him. I always wonder where that dude is. 6th grade. Brad's dad had this cherry red Corvette Stingray. This thing wasn't a piece of rusted garbage. This thing was babied more than Jesus himself. Brad's dad cared more about that car than his own mother anyway. Brad's dad is working on the car, and he gets a phone call or something saying that Brad's grandparent had died. He puts his tool up, closes the hood, and splits with Brad's mom to wherever. Brad calls us. Party at his house. We are 14. Pick up a bunch of root beer and order pizza and watch Faces of Death. Later on that night, Brad gets the idea to take his dad's car out. The thing is, Brad didn't know his dad had drained the oil, but didn't refill it. He didn't put the plug in, or the oil cap back on top of the engine either. Brad starts it up, backs out of the driveway, and hammers it down the road he lived on. We're in a housing addition out in the country, so there wasn't any traffic. Anyway, he's hauling ass. At 14, I had yet to see a car go that fast. He gets about a half mile down the road and this thing faking explodes. We hop on our bikes and pedal our ass off to the scene. It was unreal. Smoke. Coolant shooting out of hoses. Parts of the engine shot through the fiberglass body. Brad is bawling his eyes out. My dad is going to kill me. I mean, this kid flips. We three freaking haul ass out of there, leaving Brad with his mess. He wasn't at school Monday and we never heard from him. Brad, you get brought up on occasion. We three wish you well. The only reason I know some parts that I wouldn't know, like the engine not being full of oil, is because one of my buddies' dad ran into Brad's dad a week or two after it happened. We never found out what happened to Brad though. There was this kid in my 7th grade class. Back then, I was somewhat into drawing comics, among other pursuits, so I hung out with other art nerds. My friend, who will remain nameless, drew the best of all of us. Although he was a bit of a Todd McFarlane imitator, who had yet to find his own style, for 12 years old, he was a bloody prodigy. And I think he was quite popular among our crowd, though suffered the same bullying as any nerd our height. Still, generally well liked and admired, due to his undeniable talents. One time I had a bully in junior high gym class. He kept poking my bunghole, and I seriously wonder to this day if he had latent homosexual issues. This was exacerbated by the fact that he became a bodybuilder after high school. Anyway, I drew a bunch of comics about this bully that were basically like Itchy and Scratchy, with me playing the Itchy role. I Xeroxed these and handed them out at my school. This prompted my bully to basically challenge me to a real fight, which I did not want, for either of our sakes. He was a tough kid, but I had some training in martial arts, so it could have gone badly for one or both of us. But it never happened. My friend, the phenomenal artist, stood between me and him, and basically said the only thing you'll prove by beating him up is that you're the bully. And there was a big crowd of band nerds behind us, none of whom were particularly fond of this bully, so it diffused the situation. Then the bully tried to get one of the other bad kids to jump me, but I guess he thought the comics were funny. Many people did, because he refused. So the whole thing was a big win for free speech, satirism, and anti-bullying. Then one day a year or two later, my friend got ambushed by some bullies, ironically his own kind, which is to say, some Jewish kids. Anyway, they faked him up so badly, he had some kind of testicular damage that I think required surgery. His parents moved him away to another school, and I never saw him again, nor did I hear much about him. I always wonder if he stuck with his art, because he was quite a bit better than me. Ultimately, I felt very bad for him, and admired his idealist courage. But I can't pull anything up on his name, even though he was a professional quality artist at age 12, so I kinda think he must have given up, and never really made it as an artist. There was a super popular kid in my high school that did sports, was friends with all the right people, and went to every party. This dude was funny and likable all around, and once he graduated he breezed through college and was on his way to finishing an MBA. He and two friends from high school were back in my town for spring break, and they ended up being rammed at an intersection by someone who didn't stop at a stop sign. The asshole was fine, but the kids that got hit weren't so lucky. One kid needed pins in his legs, the other has a metal plate in his skull now, and the popular kid got hit the hardest. He was in a vegetative state, and when he woke up he had suffered heavy brain damage. He died a few months ago, after having just learned how to eat again. His mom had thrown fundraisers and spent all of her savings getting him medical care and rehabilitation services. Turns out the kid had been having strokes for months and needed around-the-clock care. One of the strokes finally did him in, and although doctors tried their best, they couldn't save him. He was 24. It made me realize that there's no real rhyme or reason to who gets lucky and stays healthy throughout their life and who doesn't. But that guy's charisma and kindness made sure that everyone around him tried their hardest to keep him around, and although he didn't make it, his impact really mattered. Definitely made me reflect on how I was acting at the time, and helped me open up to the idea that it's okay to lean on the people that care about you when times are hard. They'll usually be there for you. This isn't as serious as other people's posts, because there isn't any serious drugs and or deaths, and it wasn't a few seconds, but here it goes. So my brother was the popular kid. He was often called Alaska, because that was where we were before we moved. My dad was in the army. We were up there for 2 years. He was pretty funny, but didn't really care all that much for school. My dad hated this, and he would sometimes beat him. My brother ran away for a few hours, until my dad contacted him saying that he was going to change the locks. As far as I'm aware, none of his friends knew this. He got invited to a party once, and started drinking. He was 16. The cycle with my dad repeated over and over until my brother graduated. He barely graduated with a GPA of 2.3. He was planning on joining the Navy, but when he got to boot camp, they found out he has ADHD and kicked him out. This really hurt him. He started drinking heavily with a couple of friends and started dipping tobacco. He also got into so many crashes that we were kicked off our insurance. Our parents were not happy. A little bit after his 21st birthday, they sent off to a camp to help calm him down all the way in Colorado. One of the requirements was to find a job. He got fired and lied that he found another. When the program found out, they kicked him out. My parents tried to send him to another one, but he ran away. He was homeless in Las Vegas for a few months. He somehow found his way up to Portland. He's luckily doing better. He's not drinking as much and isn't dipping anymore and has a steady job at a pizza place. I hope I didn't just jinx it for him. Sorry for formatting on mobile. A popular girl PG in my middle school was known for being not so nice, but nothing was ever really done about it by the school staff. That is until we had a trip to Washington DC in our last year of middle school, grade 8, ages 13 to 14. It was a sleepaway trip and we stayed in hotels around the sites we were to visit. After we checked into one of the hotels, I was in the elevator with PG, one of her friends, and a student with special needs. I grew up with a brother with special needs, and this makes me aware and understanding of people with special needs, and very protective. While we were in the elevator, PG starts flirting with the special needs student, taking selfies with him, getting him to hug her, all while her friend was laughing. PG was Snapchatting the whole thing so that other people could laugh at the jokes she made of the special needs student. This made me mad. I went to the trip supervisors and showed them PG's Snapchats and explained the situation. Apparently she had complained to them that the special needs student was touching her when she asked him to hug her, and that she didn't like it. They weren't happy about it either. We were on a very tight time schedule the whole trip, and the administrators had to hold back our buses 10 to 15 minutes so they could make an announcement about bullying. Everyone knew it was her. I made sure of it too, through casual middle school gossip. No one gets away with being that kind of cruel. It held up our trip, so the other students weren't happy either anyways. People still remember her for that, and she didn't change much in high school. Still bullied kids, still typically got away with it. At least now she's no longer PG and seen as a bully instead. I hope her life is going well and that she's changed her ways. My school has 2 cases, and it was a massive case. A. Case 1. People. V. Boy. And Z. Girl. These 2 are very popular. They are a great couple. Both of them are very good looking too. The guy's more popular though. The boy is a basketball player and a student council member, hence why he's popular, and he is a part of a gang that is filled with popular and rich people, plus some of them are basketball player, and they influence the school a lot. The girl is a vice leader of the health team. Background: V is a friend of mine and still is. We were in the same class when we were 7th grader. That's why I actually knows a lot about him. Even though he looks scary, he is very friendly and tall for a middle schooler, especially for my country. Story: it happened in October. There was an event for choosing the leader of the student council. He was one of the candidates, and so was I. The incident happened one day before the big debate that would eventually affect everyone's choices of picking the leader. The debate happened on Thursday. The Saturday that week, my friend told me they have a hot tea that only a few knows, so they told me about how V and Z had sex in the 4th floor school bathroom. Though, some people still question if it really happened. They were caught because the homeroom teacher of Z asked her why she wasn't focusing. She told her teacher that V forced her to DK that, and she started crying, and so an investigation began. Because of that news, on Monday after that, the school did an unexpected phone search, and the teachers monitors the students more, especially ones who are dating. After the incident, the guy and girl were suspended for around 1 week. Then the guy got expelled and the girl moved school. Since V is very popular, everyone still talks about it. Point B. Case 2. I'm gonna keep this one short. People: Q, boy, and X, girl. Background: Q and X are both very popular and both are friends with V. They both are very good looking and are the match made in heaven. Q is a basketball player and X is one of the member of a student council, and both of them were in the gang with rich and influential people. Both of them are smart. X lives with her grandparents because her mom and dad already passed away. And everyone wasn't that shocked when it happened because she's a damn hoe. Story: happened like on January. I got told by one of X's best friend that she sucked Q's dick, and they filmed it. Long story short, one person had vengeance for Q and he took Q's memory card and told the teacher, and both of them were suspended. Their choice is to come back to K school, but be mentally prepared or move school. And the video got spread to other middle schools, so yikes. I wouldn't classify myself as popular, always just chose to be friendly to everyone because that's how I was raised, but I can confidently say in middle school I had lots of friends in many different friend circles. I went to private school, so my class was extremely sheltered and, looking back, pretty behind in social development. Now that I think about it, I was the guy in class that experienced the first of anything. First person to kiss a girl. First person to ask a girl on a date. First person to see boobs, lol. My brother's friend dared me to do something and said she'd flash me if I did. I think you get the picture. But that all changed the day I got acid on the top of my nose, and the guys in my class I thought were my friends called me Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Girls that would call my house every night to talk or instant message me on AIM stopped hitting me up. The guys wouldn't let me sit at the lunch table because my nose would blind them. I remember those. It appeared early in the week, and by Friday, when my mom picked me up, I burst into tears because of how mean everyone was. To make matters worse, a bunch of the guys in my class saw my tears, which led to more ridicule and shame. Being 13 at the time, my life started crumbling and I dropped into a deep sadness. I finished out 8th grade, but was not mentally ready to embark on high school, so I ultimately had to do 8th grade twice, which actually turned out to be the best decision in my life. Eventually, as we got older, I was able to reconnect with some of the people in my class, and a lot of them apologized for the way they treated me at the end of time, which meant a lot. Growing up in a wealthy home situation, my former classmates admitted a lot of the treatment stemmed from jealousy because I was always showing up with whatever was the latest in item. But I explained I was just wearing or using whatever stuff my parents could offer. Both were raised in extremely poor and ghetto living situations, and my parents always vowed to give everything and offer every opportunity to my siblings and I that they never received. Just wish these understandings woulda happened a lot earlier in life. Woulda saved a lot of tears, but I definitely learned valuable lessons in the treatment of people. This is such an awkward question because all the answers that people are posting have barely anything to do with being popular. They can all pass for answers to a question How did some random kid you knew have their life fall apart in a few seconds? This question kind of follows this cliché idea that so-called popular kids have it good in high school, but that it's only temporary, because once they become adults they usually become failures, while the geeky nerdy kids that they bullied go on to have great lives and well-paying jobs, which must be the age group this thread is referring to, because once you become a grown adult such terms like popularity barely even mean anything to you anymore in terms of social interactions, other than maybe for popularity of consumer goods or marketing products. This line of thought is really just rooted in some kind of awkward teen resentment, and not beneficial to someone at all, even if they are what they would label themselves as being unpopular. Not only that, but for people who do think this way, it'll be a huge letdown when 10 years pass and they find out that success in life is not negatively correlated with some partially made up thing like teenage popularity. As a lot of jock or popular high school kids will go on to have a very successful and happy lives, and examples of the opposite, failure occurring at the same clip with unpopular kids. Each of those life outcomes and everything in between will occur with kids of all sorts of popularities at a pretty even and consistent rate. The prime thing to remember is that your grade school popularity does not define you. So-called popularity is temporary and an illusionary construct created by a social structure where you see the same people every day who you've seen for the past 12 years of your life and the like, of which will never occur again in your life after you graduate high school, unless you join some kind of weird commune or cult down the line. Lol. It's something you will most likely laugh about 10 plus years later, especially if it's something you're self-conscious about at the moment. So no, there's no reason to think popular kids have any more of a chance for their life to fall apart than you have a chance for your own life to fall apart regardless of your respective popularity. You all have a chance for your life to fall apart, and that's based in so many factors that have little to nothing to do with how many girls or guys in your school want to hang out or think you're cool. Try to make friends with people who are similar to you, rather than trying to force friendships with people who are not, as those people are not worth your time, especially if they are not interested in you. You are valuable, and so is your time, so spend your efforts towards people who will actually give time back without worrying about the others. No one is required to be friends with anyone else, and that's what makes true friendship meaningful. Become as responsible as possible and take your life seriously while still enjoying it, and hopefully you won't have your life end up being one of the answers to some thread like this, even if you weren't popular. TLDR, although I'm a clear-cut millennial, this is absolutely the most boomerish sounding Reddit post I've ever made in my life, and for that please disregard if you wish. LMAO JK in this case, that actually probably lends it some credibility, so go back and read it all to X sukas.